I couldn't help that I wanted to take it to the next level, cause I wanted that great love, like standing in the middle of a bonfire. You don't know how you got there, but you hold tight, knowing that you can't get burned. Just tell me how we lost track of everything but each other. I honestly don't know. And tell me how we messed up, drifting away from each other. Didn't want to let you go. Cause we wanted different things, and I have to deal with it, but it's not easy. So tell me how to let go, cause you really seem to know how to carry on.
I'd like to reconvene the meeting of the City Council Public Finance Authority. Clerk, please call the roll.
All right. Councilmember Kalmick.
Here.
Mosier.
Here.
Vandermark.
Here.
Strickland.
Here.
McKeon.
Here.
Bolton.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
All present.
Members, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Today it's going to be led by City Manager Al Zlinka. Now we'll have an invocation by Chaplain Roger Wigg of the Huntington Beach Police Department.
Would you please pray with me as we ask God's blessing on tonight's meeting? Most gracious Heavenly Father, you tell us in your word that the authorities that exist are appointed by God, and each one is God's minister to you for good. And that applies to each of our city council members. You've opened the door for each of them to serve, and you've called them for this specific time and purpose. There's a great responsibility that goes along with being a member of our city council, and each of them requires your wisdom, Lord, to deal with the many difficult issues that come before them. We ask that you would provide each one with discernment, clarity, and direction as they consider and deliberate the issues on the agenda this evening. We pray that you would give each council member patience as they hear the comments from those who will be coming to the podium to speak this evening. Keep them open to the feedback they receive, both positive and negative, so they can govern with the most complete information and to provide the best direction for our city. And Lord, please guide each speaker who comes to the podium this evening to offer their comments clearly and concisely with dignity and respect. Lord, you've called each council member to the role that they now occupy for such a time as this. So we ask you to guide them by your Spirit. Lord, it really is a difficult role to serve a diverse community like Huntington Beach. So we ask that you would give each council member your wisdom, discernment, peace, patience as they receive the input from citizens in our community and consider all of the information presented to them. We know that each council member is doing their very best with the talents and gifts that you have given them to continue to move our city forward. We ask you to bless each of our council members and their families, that you would keep them healthy and safe. And we pray for each and every one of our first responders and public servants as they so diligently and faithfully serve our community. And we ask all these things in your precious and most holy name, Lord. Amen.
All right, members, going to city attorney, closed session report by the city attorney. Do you have anything to report?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing tonight.
Announcements of supplemental communications. City clerk, do we have any supplemental communications?
Yes, we do. I'm going to have a really brief report. All of the items that I'm going to announce were received after publication of the City Council agenda on Thursday, March 16th. One item for City Manager's Report number 9, for consent calendar 14, one item for 16 on consent, one item for 18 on consent, one item for 21 on consent. These are also put on the website for the public. And for administrative item 26, we received one item and 2 items for item number 28. I'll announce the public hearing items at that time.
Thank you. Members, we're now going to public comments. At this time, the City Council will receive comments from members of the public regarding any topic, including items on the open session agenda. Individuals wishing to provide a comment may do so in person by filling out a request to speak form delivered to the city clerk. All speakers are encouraged but not required to identify themselves by name. Each speaker may have up to 3 minutes unless the volume of speakers warrants reducing the time allowance. Please note that the Brown Act does not allow discussion or action on topics that are not on the agenda. Members of the public who would like to speak directly with a council member on item not on the agenda may consider scheduling an appointment by contacting the City Council Administrative Assistant at 714-536-5553 or emailing the entire City Council at city.council@surfcity-hb.org. City Clerk, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
We have 19 signed up to speak, so I'm going to go ahead and call the first 10, and when you come down, please approach both podiums. Rick Takatamo, Pat Goodman, Ken Inouye, Shirley Detloff, Pam Free, Allie Plum, Jenny Braithwaite, Amory Hansen, Kathy Ryder, and Tim Geddes.
Thank you for being here. Please
Okay.
proceed.
All right, thank you. Mayor Strickland, City Council members, my name's Pat Goodman, and I want to encourage you all to approve agenda item number 25 and submit a housing element in good faith to the state of California Housing and Community Development to certify it. This housing element is a plan to demonstrate that the city has the capacity to accommodate its 2021-29 RHNA. And you have the incredible opportunity to bring about creative solutions to the housing need in our community over the remaining 6 years of this cycle. It is most likely that only a fraction of the total units will be built during this period, although based upon the immediate past cycle, we exceeded the moderate income market rate units, but fell short on the very low income units. So it's something to pay attention to. We all know there's a housing inventory shortage This housing element attempts to identify a way forward for Huntington Beach to do its share of filling the need over the remaining 6 years of this cycle. I thank the staff for their extraordinary work to accommodate the wishes and really demands of the residents and yet respond professionally to the requirements of SCAG and the state. Item 26 is of note also for me. It does appear this is the 90-day plan to address homelessness or improve the services that we already have. It appears that the good work of staff and the presentation that Lieutenant Brian Smith gave last session or two ago, that the current system to address homeless and behavioral health needs of the city is working. With a few enhancements of oversight and reporting, the programs will continue with the full support of the council. My only concern is that in downgrading the position of leadership for this department, some of the existing duties will be eliminated. Which are you willing to give up or have absorbed by other positions? I think that this really needs greater clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Thank you, council members, for the invitation to speak. Good evening. My name is Rick Takatomo from the Parkside Estates Homeowners Association. We are a development of about 111 homes near Grand and Rivergate. Our developer, Shea Homes, has been working with your Public Works Department for the last year to attempt to close our development and turn over our streets to the city. Our issue is that the curb and gutter designs that were inspected and approved by the city in the past have been re-inspected as part of this closeout activity and rejected by the city. The city is demanding that the builder demolish and replace perfectly good curbs and gutters that perform their function well and replace them at this late date. If the sidewalks need to be replaced as well, this can damage our landscaping, in which some of our owners have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars. Our homeowners certainly haven't budgeted for these kinds of unexpected costs, which don't seem fair. Meanwhile, our streets sit in a vulnerable, incomplete state, so that the heavy rains that we're experiencing now are degrading the existing temporary blacktop, causing damage to the street substrate, causing more costs. Even worse, because the blacktop can't be completed to meet the curbs and gutters, there's a dangerous height difference between the gutters and the blacktop, and many of our residents and visitors have tripped and fallen because of that unevenness. So, please expedite efforts to work in a reasonable fashion with our developer. Avoid additional costs to homeowners, eliminate accumulating damage and tripping accidents on the streets, and allow the completion of our development. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Hi. Before I begin my comments, I'd just like to say I'm so happy to be here. I don't know if you noticed, but I was sitting with some of the true icons of our community, and I was telling them I feel like I've been promoted to the varsity. So thank you very much. My name is Kenneth Saylor, and I'm a 50-year resident of Huntington Beach. Many of you may recall that I unsuccessfully ran for the position of city council with some pretty amazing people who wanted to serve the people of Huntington Beach. As a father of 3 daughters, I shared the sentiment of Mayor Pro Tem Gracie Vandermark, who said that she wanted to make Huntington Beach a safe place for her daughter. Councilmember Casey McCann's long family ties to Huntington Beach are demonstrated by their family business, the Beef Palace, which has served the people of Huntington Beach for many years, with great beef, good prices, and good service, I might add. Councilmember Pat Burns has demonstrated a loving commitment to his family, as he has always referred to the love and respect that he has for his 2 nephews. Although Mayor Tony Strickland is a newcomer to our city, we're hoping that he will lead and guide the city through all the perils of working with state government, because you've had a long and illustrious career as a politician, as a member of the State Assembly and the State Senate. Now, you may recall during the campaign, a major issue was this whole question of RHNA. The question of whether or not the state has the right to come to the city of Huntington Beach and make certain demands about our housing. Now, part of us took the position that we would work with this issue by working with the state of California in a proactive way to try to ensure that the city would be treated fairly and that we would have control of the necessary and needed construction in our cities. Another alternative was suggested that we fight the housing mandate by taking the state to court. We all know that as a result of the election, the city has decided to take the state to court. As a result, as our lawsuit with the state continues, we must realize the fact that if we lose, the city of Huntington Beach could lose control over the implementation of the state housing mandate in our own city. This is something none of the residents of Huntington Beach want or deserve. As a result of the potential catastrophic impact of losing the lawsuit, I would respectfully request that the City Council and the City Attorney consider the hazards of litigation as this case winds its way through the courts. Now, I would respectfully request that the City Council and City Manager follow the wisdom of the great late country singer, Mr. Kenny Rogers, who said, "You got to know when to hold them, you got to know when to fold them." Fighting a battle which leads to your own destruction is not a win. The 200,000 residents of Huntington Beach deserve no less. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for being here. Next speaker. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Strickland, members of the City Council. My name is Shirley Detloff, and I've been a resident of this city since 1964. I'm here tonight to urge you to support the housing element and to send it to HCD for approval. This document is one of the finest and most in-depth of any housing plan that I have seen, and I have seen many, including earlier ones for the city of Huntington Beach. I was on the Planning Commission for 4 years, 8 years on City Council, and 5 years on the State Coastal Mission. I was a part of the committee who reviewed the last housing element for the city. This experience allowed me to see hundreds of land use documents. This is one of the best. It goes deeply into land use planning, covering every level of planning for development, from a description of what our city is, what requirements must be met, public outreach, data research, maps showing where development is possible at all levels of income, development cost, impacts, and citizens' participation. Although a very lengthy document, I hope that all of you have been able to read it. I've heard from some in the community who have the mistaken belief that this document only addresses low-income development, but that is not true. This is a planning tool which addresses very low incomes, moderate incomes, and above moderate incomes. In fact, above moderate incomes receives the most housing allowed, 5,250 new homes. The housing element is a tool that covers the entire city. If you don't have an approval housing element, the state has many ways to encourage that we do so. They are able to fine us, deny state dollars that are extremely important to us, and if all fails, take over all of our planning decisions. Would they actually do this? Ask some of the school districts who have had this happen when state laws are ignored. So it is in the best interest of the citizens of the community that you approve the housing element tonight, and then hope that the state feels we are in compliance and certifies our housing element so that we can do what we have always done, plan and execute for the future. Now it is your responsibility to make sure that everyone in our community has access to housing, whether or not they are a teacher, a nurse, a waiter, a caregiver, a retiree, or the owner of a large corporation. Housing should be available to all who choose to live in Huntington Beach. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Hi. Hello, Mayor and Council. I am Pam Free. I'm the former 30-year manager of the Pier Plaza Art Affair, and for full disclosure, I am Casey McKeon's mother. So proud of you, my son. First, I'd like to thank Mayor Strickland for allowing speakers their full 3 minutes. Last time I was here to speak, Mayor Del Glaze cut the speaking time to 90 seconds. You all had a presentation on ethics, and that's what I'm here to speak about tonight. Equality, kindness, inclusion. These are words that I have heard Natalie Mosier use many times. These words seem important to her. Natalie Mosier and Kim Carr were the council liaisons to the Downtown Business Improvement District. They, Dan Kalmick, Rhonda Bolton, and Mike Posey voted to put my professionally and successfully run Pier Plaza Art Affair out for proposal. Remember, I'm Casey McKeon's mother. I did not submit a proposal because of the drastically increased fee to rent Pier Plaza. As a reminder, only one group, the Downtown Business Improvement District, turned in a proposal. That is usually a sign that something is not right. After the downtown bid was selected to run the new proposed art show at Pier Plaza, the rental fee paid to the city was reduced by more than half. Did the downtown bid have prior knowledge the fee would be reduced? In spite of their fee reduction, the bid doubled the fee for the vendors. Notice I'm not saying artists because the bid is allowing commercial merchandise to be sold. Late last year, I was asked to meet with bid manager Jamie Strong. She explained the artisan fair, as they call it, was having trouble getting vendors. She asked if I would share the contact info for my artists. Her plan was to give a 50% reduced rate if they would participate. I told her that that was highly unethical, and the truth always surfaces. That is basic business 101. Equality, kindness, or inclusion is not being shown here. Recently, the on-site manager, Jody McKay, left her notebook on one of the vendor tables. He opened and read it. Turned out that the vendors are paying different fees. Both fees are published as, booth fees are published as $100 per booth per day. He pays $200 for a double booth per day, while other vendors are paying $100 for a double booth per day. It was also revealed that some of the single booth vendors are getting a reduced rate and others are paying full price. This information was shared with all the vendors, and you can imagine there was much anger towards the management and between the vendors. Where is the equality, kindness, and inclusion here? This unethical management has caused much division. Natalie Mosier and Kim Carr, if you are watching, can I ask you why? Not a good legacy you are leaving, putting over 50 artists out of work. This is only one of many issues I have spoken about since the new management took over. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Next speaker. Thanks for being here.
Good evening, Mayor Strickland and Huntington Beach City Council. Sometimes games get boring when you know the score ahead of time. 4-3, sound familiar? But our city is not boring, and its future just may depend on your decisions tonight. I challenge you to agree 7-0 and pass that housing element. Why? The financial, social, and ethical costs of being out of compliance are tremendous. Large fines up to $1.2 million per year, court mandates which strip our city of its municipal power, and having the state make decisions for our planning commission. Let freedom ring? Not likely if the state is making decisions for us. In addition to the penalties I've mentioned, the state can remove the funding we receive to fight homelessness, funds such as SB2 funds and CBDG funds. Our city report just showed that all Huntington Beach residents pay approximately $13 per year to cover the city expense of running the Navigation Center and Be Well. If we lose our state funding, that $13 will grow exponentially. I'm sure some of you might suggest discontinuing these programs. Save some taxpayer funds. Why not sell the land around the Navigation Center? We would end up owing the granting agencies money upon selling the Navigation Center site, since it is a single-purpose building. We would lose local control and need to spend even more on litigation costs. In 3 minutes, I cannot even begin to explain the ethical reasons for helping the unhoused population. But financially, there will be huge repercussions. The residents of the Navigation Center might go back to the streets, where it will cost us much more in general funds, ambulance calls, police calls, and added maintenance. Regardless of the ordinances municipalities pass, cities cannot enforce anti-camping ordinances if they do not have enough homeless shelter beds available. Whether we should sue the state of California is a separate issue. It cannot and should not be used as an excuse to fail to pass a housing element. Voting yes is simply creating a blueprint, a plan, and many of the projects will never be built. The decision to build should be a cooperative venture between developers and elected city officials. Voting no to the housing element means embarking on the highest risk path with the lowest benefit. I'd like to
10
believe
seconds.
that all 7 of you will join together on this rare occasion to support the highest benefits and quality of life for all residents. Please vote yes on 25.
Thank you for being here. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Good evening, Honorable Huntington Beach City Council, hardworking city staff, and concerned citizens. My name is Allie Plum, and I own an immobile home in Huntington Beach. Tonight, I wish to speak about affordable housing. I'm involved with 17 manufactured home communities in Huntington Beach because I sit on the board of the the Huntington Beach Mobile Home Advisory Board and also the Mobile Home Resident Coalition. If you were to take a tour of all the parks, you would see hardworking families, seniors, veterans, trying their best to keep their homes maintained and paying each month for in some cases, astronomically increasing bills. Of course, we all share the pain of inflation for food, gas, and utilities, but the mental stress of increasing space rents on top of monthly commitments can be too much. I've heard of heart attacks, panic attacks, mental anxiety, and yes, even a suicide. The manufactured home parks of Huntington Beach are not allowed to be counted in the affordable housing numbers. There are strict deed restrictions that park owners would have had to follow, and only a new build is apparently counted, not a new home on a lot. Some uninformed or ill-informed people think they're millionaires living in these parks. Seriously? Out of the almost 6,000 residents, I would bet that way more are below the moderate to low income line, if not now, soon, with the way rents are escalating. It's time to address the predatory park owners with smart solutions. Help City Council be part of solving the problems of perhaps more homelessness and seniors being priced out of their homes they own but cannot afford any longer because of the space and land rent. I've listened to many of the stories of resident owners buying their home years ago, sometimes even paying it off, and now the land rents can be as high as $2,615 a month in Rancho Huntington and $3,300 a month in Huntington by the Sea, passing the fixed incomes of seniors and budgets of families. Come on, City Council. We can't blame the manufactured homeowners for their lack of hard work or asking for handouts. We need to collaborate on solutions. The city helping purchase some safe resident-owned communities would be a start. What does it mean to have a conversation with both sides really listening to each other? Let's start tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Tim Geddes, and I'm a 39-year resident of Huntington Beach. I would like to start out by complimenting Mayor Strickland on his adherence to the policy of providing speakers and public comments a full 3 minutes to address the council. And although it has to date added considerable time to the agendas, it has allowed the exercise of free speech to explain to the audience and the viewing public the flaws of the council's majority logic and rationale for their actions and decision-making. This is the only counterweight that many members of the community have to express openly their anti-authoritarian views. Like many conservatives, the majority members of the City Council are probably enamored with the policies and pronouncements of President Ronald Reagan. Consequently, you four seem to be following the path taken by his wife, Nancy Reagan, in her 1980s anti-drug campaign message, "Just Say No," as it applies to compliance with state mandates on housing. The Reagan strategy on drugs was simplistic and unsuccessful. The council majority strategy on housing mandates is equally simplistic and is bound to be unsuccessful. That's because there are no solutions involved in either strategy, just denial. In previous communications, I have urged the council majority to work with the remaining council members to fashion an approach to housing that would bring the city into compliance with the state and that would begin to address actual solutions to our affordable housing dilemma. The correct policy 20 years ago would have been to focus on moderate to low income housing to begin with, but we all know the conservative council majorities during that period focused on profits over people. We are now paying for that price. We are now paying a price for that strategy. Yes, it is unfair to impose high-density development in areas of our city for which it is not suited. Yes, it is unfair to impose the added burdens of traffic, city services, and education on our overtaxed systems. Yes, it is unfair to breach the promises of suburban coastal living that were made by previous conservative city council majorities. But it is unfair of this conservative council majority not to work towards solutions that will correct the situation and get the states off our back. Don't just say no. Say yes to involving the full council to get our housing element right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City staff, and HP residents. Kathy Ryder, a homeowner and voter in Huntington since 1985. I would like to thank the staff today for their excellent research and presentation that was made at the request of Councilmember Burns regarding the reopening of the Huntington Beach City Wells. This research and presentation made it very clear that reopening our city-owned wells would not increase city revenue and would in fact cost the city revenue every year, and the reopening could potentially waste up to $1 million. That is just not sound fiscal responsible behavior. I am also glad to note that after 103 days in office, we will now have the 90-day homeless plan will be approved. At the study session, we learned that what we had been doing was working, and it looks like we will continue to do much of what we were already doing. So we have been making a difference. But how will this plan actually solve homelessness? In the plan, there is a request for some additional overtime for both police funding and both for social workers. And there's also a request to hire some kind of an independent auditor. So should I assume that every 90 days there's going to be a new 90-day homeless plan? Is this fiscally responsible, or is this intended to be some kind of a gotcha because we really don't like what we're currently doing? But perhaps the best way to help our neighbors who are experiencing housing insecurity and to prevent real homelessness will be to try to provide some actual affordable housing, and if necessary, provide supportive housing for those who desperately need it, particularly those who have ties to our city. And it is also unrealistic to think that those who work in our city, such as a school bus driver, a caregiver at a senior facility, that would have to commute an hour or more to come serve the citizens of our city. Again, that's just not realistic. So it is time to pass the housing element. It's time to work for our community. It's time to make sure that we have adequate workforce housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Mr. Amory Hansen. I'm speaking tonight in support of item 28, the 90-day plan to address homelessness. I believe the measures listed in the plan will help us continue the important work of ending homelessness in Huntington Beach. Help should always be given in Huntington Beach to those individuals who seek it. Sadly, some will not. I believe this plan ensures a proper balance between sheltering and enforcement. I am particularly supportive of the efforts to increase transparency and engage the community on homelessness. I look forward to hearing Chief Parr's presentation on this important matter at a later council meeting. Consideration might also be made to holding a town hall on this matter to allow residents to discuss their concerns in a more informal setting. Once again, I urge a yes vote on item 28. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to call the next group,
Thanks.
the final group. Jessamine Garner, Libby, Pano Frucciakis, Guest PJ, Carroll, Kathy Tillotson, Linda, Carrie Swan, Chris Waring, and Roger Knorr.
Thank you for being here. Please proceed. Thanks for being here.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Strickland and esteemed City Council. My name is Pano Frucciakis. I am a proud lifetime resident of the great city of Huntington Beach, and I am also proudly serving on our city's Public Works Commission. I want to say that I've been busy at work this past few months. We've had a lot that we've gone over to fight for the people of Huntington Beach. There's a lot of good projects that are in the works right now, and we voted on the capital improvement program that will be coming to this council in late May, June, and there's a lot of good items that are going to be on there. So I'm happy to be on that committee. Thank you so much, Mayor Strickland, for appointing me to that so that I can serve our community. The main reason I'm here tonight, though, I want to say is that there has been the issue of our century that has really come up, and that is for local control versus special interests that live hundreds and hundreds of miles away from our homes here in Huntington Beach. Our council majority has very bravely put themselves out there and have stood up against the Sacramento regime that has failed all 40 million of our California residents in this great state because of ridiculous and reckless policies. At the very top of this whole corrupt system is none other than Governor Gavin Newsom himself. In fact, he's gone quite viral recently because he's gone after our city and he's attacked the people of Huntington Beach, calling our city a disgrace over 7 times in a single Zoom call meeting. He's even gone as far as to claim that the people of Huntington Beach and the council majority are responsible for the statewide affordable housing crisis. Give me a break. That's absolutely ridiculous. Not only that, but at the same time, this very governor, when we look at his record, when we look at what he's done, he's completely and totally failed time and time again. Let's look at a few things here. In fact, let me tell you, Governor, what is actually a disgrace. It's not the people of Huntington Beach. First of all, it's the fact that we got pouring rain going on outside. It's literally flooding all over the place, and we're not capturing the water. We're not building the reservoirs to be able to actually use and utilize this water. Instead, we're just letting it flow into the ocean. I'm sure people have seen the videos where the water is just pouring back into the ocean. That's ridiculous. That's incompetent, and that's disgraceful. Not only that, let's look at homelessness, right? This city council majority right here, they've put forward a plan to address this crisis. What has Governor Gavin Newsom done? Oh, he spent $22 billion of your taxpayer money to make the problem even worse because it continuously continues to spiral out of control. What else has he done? Oh, that's right. We are literally having a massive budget crisis going on in the state of California, and we're having businesses of all sizes fleeing our state, whether they be high names or small names, they're fleeing. So I want to say this. People of Huntington Beach, you are not a disgrace. Governor Gavin Newsom, you are the disgrace.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Good evening. I'd like to start by congrats and salutation to the leaving Director of Community and Library Services, Chris Salma. Chris is one of these individuals you never want to have to say goodbye to, and this is a huge, huge loss to Huntington Beach. Chris has served us well as a warm, kind-hearted, caring, friendly, respectful, innovative, humble, hardworking soul, and has given HB far more than he has received back. Good luck to the other city directors, Sean Crumbly, Director of Public Works, Jason Austin, Director of Homelessness and Behavioral Health, and our last Director of Finance. I assume they all have seen the writing on the wall from this new bully city council and left in this unprecedented mass exodus. But I really wanted to talk to Mayor Strickland about the CC meetings. The good citizens of Huntington Beach would like to see our CC members return to orderliness, decorum, and polite behavior. We want our meetings back. Mayor Strickland, please do your job and ring in the loud and constant jeering, heckling, name-calling, booing, attacking, and intimidation your campaign crew seems to exhibit. Should a person sit in the galley up there, or to speak up here at the podium here, you are pelted with screams heckling like, Slanderer, that's crap. You lost. Shut the fuck up. Pedophile, groomer, you're sick. You're a piece of shit. White privilege, fool. God hates you. God is watching you. God will get you. Stop grooming our kids. Stay away from our kids. Nazi, brown-skinned hater, and many, many more. You lie, and you're a liar, from our proud boy, Luke Dennis, up there, who likes to say that with his sympathizers. The city council have turned into a circus, but the good citizens of Huntington Beach would like our meetings back. One of our past mayors, Shirley Strickland, said it very well in the Daily Pilot. Recent city council meetings have been unruly and without decorum that we have come to expect from previous councils. Freedom of speech, of course, is the basis of democracy, but unruly conduct and name-calling is not. Leaders have an obligation to lead and to set the tone. People of HB want to speak here, but they don't. Business owners, neighbors feel like they have targets on their back. You hear the fear on social media. An entry from a social media. Question for the group. I have a female friend who is thinking of speaking at one of our CC meetings about the Pride gay flag removal vote. She's worried about her safety, though. I told her I didn't think it was a very good idea. Eric Peterson, when he left the Days for the last time, didn't go sit with his wife and his family. He marched up the stairs, to the loud verbal attacks on my friends and other people and he physically alleviated a physical fight.
Thank you.
We would like our meetings back.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Good evening, Mayor Strickland and the City Council of Huntington Beach. My name is Jessamine Garner. I am a resident of Huntington Beach. I'm also a communications director for YIMBY Law and YIMBY Action. They're both pro-housing nonprofit organizations that do all kinds of advocacy for housing at all income levels. I am here to speak in favor of item 25 and to urge the City Council to move forward towards a substantially compliant housing element. I think one of the things that's really important about the whole process is for the community to understand the process. And so I think I'm going to use some of this time to share some information that might be helpful for my neighbors and possibly members of the City Council as well. There's really a lot at stake when it comes to the city housing element process and whether or not this goes smoothly and whether or not we have a substantially compliant housing element. So the housing element process is a plan to create the number of homes that each community needs in California. It takes into account all kinds of factors, including how many jobs are available, how many new households are formed, how overcrowded our homes are, as well as the number of vacant homes. Huntington Beach has historically done pretty well at building enough homes for people at moderate income levels and above moderate income levels, but we have not done well to make sure that homes at lower income levels are built and allowed for in the city code. Restrictive laws that only allow single-family detached homes, as well as obstructive behavior, mostly from wealthier homeowners, have artificially restricted the number of homes, as well as the types of homes that are available. NIMBYism has historically obstructed the creation of different housing options like townhomes and duplexes, in addition to opposing affordable homes that are subsidized. The results of this decades-long behavior has driven up prices even higher due to scarcity, while leaving many of us with rent that gobbles up more than half of our income every single month. The housing plan we have is based on research, community input, and hundreds of hours of work by dedicated city staff, and the state has already said we have a chance at having a housing plan that is substantially compliant. The consequences of not having a feasible plan in place include the loss of power to decide where new homes will go, so having a plan in place will allow us to be proactive. This is a chance to make sure young families, teachers, seniors, and workers in our community have homes available to them. It will make sure that young adults who move out of their parents' house will have a chance to stay in the community if they want to. And it's also a significant part of ending homelessness in this community and preventing future homelessness in this community and beyond in the region of Orange County. Please accept applications for duplexes in granny flats, and please facilitate the housing element process so we can have a plan that works for our community.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Good evening, Mayor Strickland and members of the City Council. My name is Carroll. I'm a retired science educator and very long-time resident. I'm speaking tonight in favor of item 25. Forgive me, I'm using a corny analogy to make my point. Suppose you're a restaurant manager. Your boss has directed you to have the tables set and the doors unlocked by 5 o'clock. You don't like some of the early diners, you know, but you have your orders. And to be fair, you do have the right to insist that restaurant guests meet the standards of your establishment. For example, you have the right to refuse service to the unruly. A housing element is like that. It only sets the table for potential development that meets standards locally established by you in cooperation with HCD. Cities do not build housing, and neither does the state. Builders build houses, apartments, and commercial space. The state is not forcing Huntington Beach to build high-rises. At the present time, the standards that you set must be met. They are clearly laid out in this document, the housing element. Developers must meet these standards. In the restaurant, if you don't open the doors on time, your boss can fire you, and you would lose all control of that place, and you would lose your paycheck. As a housing element is not approved and certified, there will be consequences. If we defy lawful direction, we could lose what control we do have. I do applaud this council for being specific in asking our competent city staff to make numerical modifications to the previous version of the housing element, and I see that this has been done. Please know that I am in total support of your approving this revised document for submission to Housing and Community Development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Kathy Tillotson. I started and ran a nonprofit in Huntington Beach called Build Futures for 9 years that took homeless youth 18 to 24 off the streets and housed them within 24 hours. We then worked with them to become self-sufficient using a step-by-step plan I have given to each of you. Council members Vandermark, Burns, and McKeown and Mayor Strickland promised in their campaigns a 90-day plan to end homelessness beginning the first day of their term. That promise has not been kept. Now, over 100 days into their term, they are proposing a 90-day plan that is doing the same things the previous council was doing. So they are admitting that what is being done is working contrary to what they were saying during their campaigns. In addition, Mayor Strickland and these same council members, Vandermark, McKeown, and Burns, failed to give a time-sensitive, non-binding letter of support to Jamboree Housing to acquire grant funds for $20 million for housing and services for homelessness in Huntington Beach. The result meant a loss of $10 million in funding to build the Healing Center, which includes a permanent shelter, supportive services, and affordable housing for Huntington Beach. Jamboree Housing has proven to be the most successful organization in Orange County in developing responsible, permanent, supportive housing. These council members have been negligent and fiscally irresponsible and failed the citizens of Huntington Beach and cost us $10 million for homelessness. The property where the Navigation Center operates was purchased for affordable housing. Based on the restricted funds used, we have about 2 years to build a permanent site with affordable housing, which the proposed Healing Center addresses. This is important so that we can enforce anti-camping laws. The Healing Center will not close the Navigation Center, but replace it, allowing it to remain open at that site permanently. The Navigation Center is working, is supported by neighbors, and has posed no challenges. Operating dollars, $900,000 a year for the Navigation Center, are provided in a large part because we have a certified housing element. So that we do not lose this funding, we must pass the housing element and get certified by the state. This is critically important. We cannot afford to keep losing all this opportunity and funding. Moving forward, it is imperative the council is prepared to work in good faith with Jamboree Housing to build the Healing Center and fully support them with no delays in getting all funding available
10 seconds.
for the Healing Center to remove the financial burden from us. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. You may proceed.
Thank you. So, good evening. As you continue to ponder what you want to do about invocations before City Council meetings, I suggest that you will not have to do much work since other elected bodies have already mastered this. Some have decided to begin their meetings with a moment of silence to allow for private prayer or meditation so that everyone becomes focused and ready to work on the agenda before them. Others have a formal written policy. For example, I found Irvine's policy that cites the 2002 California Court of Appeals case, Rubin v. City of Burbank, that ruled that certain invocations, those that constitute sectarian prayer, violate the establishment clause of the United States Constitution. But meetings can begin with words of inspiration and wisdom. Irvine further states that the purpose of an invocation is to recognize the role that freedom of religion has played in the history of our country and the contribution that religious groups make to the quality of life in their community. Irvine's guidelines become specific with these itemized rules. 1, the tone, tenor, and content of the invocation would not, to a reasonable person, be considered as advancing or disparaging a specific religion. 2, the invocation does not refer to terms associated with a specific religion, sect, or deity, such as Jesus Christ, Allah, or our Father in heaven. 3, the invocation does not refer to a particular religious holiday, significant dates, holy day, or religious event. And 4, the person giving the invocation does not read or quote from any sectarian book, doctrine, or material. Certainly the easiest and safest way to be sure Huntington Beach does not violate the Establishment Clause is to institute a moment of silence. If you choose to adopt a policy that invites speakers to deliver an invocation, you don't have to recreate the wheel. You can just copy what Irvine has already done. It is important to be respectful to all and within the guidelines decided by the courts in 2002. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Suering. I've come here before. I'm talking about the rent control, or not rent control, but for seniors. I'm over here at Surf City Beach Cottages. And I was going to talk about my situation, but you've heard enough about my situation. I am a senior basically before I start the senior fixed income. I now pay about 82% of my retirement to pay for my space rent. I own my property over at Surf City Beach Cottages, and it's getting pretty high. Anyway, some background here. Surf City Beach Cottages was purchased back, I believe, in 2012 for $56 million. And that was by one of our local motel moguls. I call them the robber barons, you know, J.P. Morgan and so forth. Anyway, I'm going to give you some data here. A person earlier gave you some data. This is current information, very creditable, of my park. Currently, the situation, we have about 184 renters who don't own their property. There's 80 people, surprised me kind of, who are still in there as owners. Some costs here, and I'm just going to give you the average. For the homeowners, we average about $2,750 a month. That's a low of 22 and a high of 33. The 184, approximately 94, 176 of the people that just come in to rent the properties, they average 28, between 21 and 35K. There's a few of, if you've gone in there, there's few 2-level, 3-level with balconies up there. They pay about $4,200 a month, but I kept them out of the details. Anyway, I did some calculations, 12 months, with the current basis of those numbers. And basically, the owner of that park is going to receive, and I'm sure he can write off any kind of debt he has on it, about $10 million clear. And they've done nothing to the park to improve it. We have a pool area. Solar panels were given to some of his rentals, They weren't even offered to our regular owners there. And anyway, just continuing on here, I think something needs to be done, especially for the seniors. I know we talk about across the board, but the seniors need something. Now, some of the seniors have money from their moms and dads and so forth and so on, so they don't have to worry about it. They come there and buy one of those 3-level jobs, and it's no big deal. But there's others of us, and I got master's degrees and so forth, but when they keep adding up those monthly
10 seconds.
10 seconds. Anyway, if you guys could consider that, I will talk about it more with you. I'd appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Carrie Swan here. I'm here to speak on agenda item 25, the housing element. I know there's a public hearing, but I have to leave for another commitment. So there's a lot to unpack on that, but I wish to focus on one thing in particular that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and that was letter B, the CEQA action, adopting a statement of overriding consideration. So my regular trips to this podium started in 2015 due mostly to the changes proposed by former council member Eric Peterson to the Beach-Edinger Corridor Specific Plan, BECSP, in order to stop any further degradation to our city and quality of life that was being thrust upon us by rapid urbanization and high-density development coming from the BECSP. Many of us in the community had to get quickly up to speed with the planning process and layers of code speak. One biggie that sticks in my mind when I learned about something called a statement of overriding consideration. Turns out that this was the dirty little secret voted on by the City Council in 2010 with the adoption of the BECSP, which in my opinion is basically a license to ignore any concerns or warnings discovered during the EIR, Environmental Impact Report. In other words, a statement of overriding consideration is planning speak for, we know it's a really bad idea, insert the reason, traffic, safety, environmental hazards, but we're going to override the concerns and do it anyway because of some perceived benefit that the project brings. In the case of the BECSP, the EIR predicted the horrible traffic we now must deal with along the Edinger Corridor, and it's too late. And the council chose to ignore this by adopting a statement of overriding consideration. I encourage everybody watching and at home, Google what this means. It's actually in CEQA. When I learned that this is how the BECSP was passed, my head exploded. We, the council, knew the BECSP zoning, I'm sorry if I'm boring you, Mr. Kelmick, was going to be a problem, and council did it anyway. Well, here we are again, and I'm here to ask the council, as well as City Attorney Michael Gates, please make sure this is not some kind of a trap. And I know we're suing the state, and God willing, will prevail, but I'm very concerned that the statement of overriding consideration may encumber us to making exceptions to protections that we need, or that there may be some future exposures. And after what happened with the BECSP, I'm a major skeptic, and I just don't trust the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Good evening, council members and the new wave. My name is Linda, and there are a lot of complicated issues I understand that the city's dealing with, and I'm just going to bite my tongue and commend all of you for dealing with it. I appreciate your service to the city. I personally am here. I was a little bit in shock, and but I just wanted to publicly pay my best regards to our wonderful community services director, Chris Lama. A little tear comes to my eye to know that he's departing our city, but he's definitely a gem. You know, I brought my kids here today because he and the whole entire community services team has been a solid impact to my life, my family, and I wanted to bring my kids down here, but they were a little shy, and they mentioned, who's Chris? And so that's why I'm kind of here tonight, to let you all know Chris Lama is like pretty much the heart of our city. Janine Laudenbeck, David Dominguez, everybody in community services really understands what a positive, safe livelihood is about, and they've proven that through the years. So huge thanks to Chris, and I just wanted to, let's see, I'm going to try to talk really fast, but so like I said, so many don't know who it is. Thanks. And it'll be really hard to sum it up, but this should do it. I came to HP for the party. We all know it's fun here, but I stayed for the community. So as I stopped drinking, family activities were very important to me. We sought after them highly. The HB Sands was like a diary to our household, and it still is. My son learned how to swim at the city gym. My daughter learned some confidence playing basketball in co-ed teams. We participated in the Bows and Boutonnieres, family dances, sleepovers at the parks. I mean, we've created so many great memories through Chris and all of his people at the community services, and we're really going to miss you so much. And I wanted to thank you for allowing me to serve on the Children's Needs Task Board. For 8 years, I was allowed to be a child advocate, and we promoted great character. And I don't know why the group was disbanded. We'll leave that to the side. But I just wanted to say Chris has made a footprint that will remain throughout HB in such a positive impact. From the clever playgrounds to the poles that line the beach bluff top, your priority over the years proved to be a common unity, health, safety, family, and fun. We know your future is bright, and we look forward to seeing the fun continue with Ashley. And we just want to thank you from the bottom of our heart for creating great memories.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
That's it. Thanks, Chris, so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, thanks for being here.
Hello, hello, city council members. I just wanted to say, first is my hunger strike. I'm at 244. I started at 263. The day before, the day after I spoke 2 weeks ago. So in 9 days, I've lost 19 pounds because of this, the hunger strike. And the reason I'm doing the hunger strike, you got to keep in mind, is because I demand, every citizen should demand a citizen oversight committee over the police department, because there's nobody watching the hen house at all, or it's insane on how the Foxes are running it. This, I don't know if, by the way, I want to thank Mayor Strickland, because he allowed me to talk to him, and he even slowed down his, I even interrupted his, I did not have him make it on time to his town hall meeting, and I want to compliment him. And folks, please go to his town hall meetings. It's great. These are actual town hall meetings. They're not like, the ones that they do right before the elections. He has committed, just like it used to be, every single month he's going to have a town hall meeting. No other person has said that, has done that, and I really want to give him a hand for that, because this is awesome. It's kind of like the Gilmore Girls, at Stars Hollow, where, they get to meet at the hall, the city hall, whatever, but if you guys want to watch it, never mind. But anyway, so it's great to have that, because it's kind of like making it back to like the Andy Griffith Show, and I really, really appreciate that. And every single one of you guys should also be appreciative of that. And this mayor, I've never seen a mayor or dealt with a mayor as great as he is. And either that or he's the greatest politician that I've ever seen. But seriously, he's got a big heart, and he's really logical, and he's really fair so far. So I'll keep you posted. Now, and say the next thing is that I have please I don't have time for this, but I will make sure. The reason I want the oversight committee is because, first of all, we hired a sheriff. A sheriff, for 30 years, he was running the detention center. I love Eric as a person, but he has been the Los Angeles County, he was in charge of all the custodies of LA. You remember when the feds had an informant in there, and then they were hiding, Sheriff Baca was hiding him? He was running the jails, okay? This guy is like so criminal, and every single one of these cops want to show off to him, so they do everything wrong.
Mayor,
yes.
I don't think it's okay for...
I can say anything I want. Don't interrupt me, because I want some time.
For an employee to be spoken about that way. I'm happy to...
The chief of police. Sorry, the chief of police, all right?
An employee of the city of Huntington Beach.
You told me you were going to call me, and you never called me, so what?
I did call you.
You said 15 minutes.
When?
I did call you, and I left you messages.
Oh, really?
Yes, I did.
That's a lie, complete lie. Sue me if you have
No.
proof.
Okay.
I can't wait.
Okay.
Thank you. Mayor Strickland, great.
Thank you.
244.
That concludes public comments.
Thank you. All right, members, we're moving down to the agenda. Council committee appointments, announcements. Any members have anything to announce? Seeing none, let's move on to AB 1234 reporting. Does any member have anything to report? Councilman.
I had a conversation with the POA.
Anything else?
Yes, I spoke with the Police Management Association about starting their labor negotiations.
Anything else? Next. All right. All right. Openness and negotiation disclosures. Oh, that's what you did. All right. Anybody else? All right. Moving on. City Treasurer's report. City Treasurer, please introduce your report.
Thank you. Let me see if I can get it up on the screen for you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come speak with you today regarding the City of Huntington Beach exposure to the current banking issues. Just one second. Let me figure out how to make it go to the next one. This is what happens when we don't have our IT person here.
Close out of it? Yeah, I'm going to close that over. Oh, there you go. There's your clicker.
Use that? Okay. Thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. Okay. So you may or may not have heard, if you were watching the news, you have heard. On Friday, March 10th, U.S. regulators closed the Silicon Valley Bank after it experienced a traditional bank run. Basically, the depositors rushed to withdraw their funds all at once. Similarly, Signature Bank of New York was closed by regulators on March 12th. Regulators immediately took action to announce that assistance would be provided to banks and all depositor funds would be available and returned. On March 12th, the Federal Reserve created the Bank Term Funding Program as an additional source of liquidity against high-quality securities, eliminating an institution's need to quickly sell all of those securities in times of stress. So that was one of the issues with Silicon Valley Bank. They had to sell securities in order to raise funds, and unfortunately, those securities were underwater at the time due to the raise in interest rates and versus the rate that they purchased those originally at. Also, they have a program that offers loans to banks as well as to savings associations, credit unions, and other depository institutions. So in conjunction with the acting CFO, we have contacted all of the city's financial partners to determine whether any of the city's accounts would be affected by these banking closures and would there be any losses that we would see here within the city. And our conclusion, which I'll show you on the next slide, the details of, is that there is very little to no effect, fortunately, on city funds, employee funds, and retirement funds. So let me just briefly go through those. So let me first begin with CalPERS. Our acting CFO contacted CalPERS immediately and found that they had not seen any adverse effects on their market liquidity. They had a very small exposure to SVB and Signature Bank, and the preliminary analysis on investment return was a loss of about 0.018%. That would translate into about $105,000 for the city's miscellaneous plan and about $140,000 for the safety plan. But again, on a percentage basis, it's 0.018, so very negligible on the size of the portfolio. We will keep you informed and continue to monitor that and let you know if there's any changes ongoing on that. With regards to the city's investment portfolio, there are no holdings of securities of either of these banks. Additionally, in our CAMP account, which is our liquidity account, there are no holdings and were no holdings of any of these banks at all. With regards to our deferred compensation account, as well as our supplemental, as well as our PARS 115 trust accounts, all of those had very, very low exposure to those banks, including First Republic. So as you can see on the right, but you can't read it, but it does say it's about 0.002%, so very de minimis effect on that. As well, on the CERT account, which is our employee retirement account through CalPERS, the range was 0 to 0.003%, and all positions had been sold on that. With regards to any exposure that the city has to financial companies, we have our banking operating accounts currently at MUFG Union Bank, which has been already purchased by Union Bank, and we're going through that right now. Our custody account is also at Union Bank. I mean, a U.S. Bank, I'm sorry. With regards to the bank's operating accounts, deposits over $250K, which is the FDIC insured limit, are collateralized at 110% per government code. So any deposits there had to be, according to government code, collateralized, which is a specific thing that they do for government funds. The securities within the custody account, so those would be the securities that we have of our city's investments, are not commingled with the custodian bank's assets at all. Those are kept separate, so there should be no issues there. And with regards to the city's portfolio holdings, the only financial institution bonds or paper that we hold are 5.9 million bonds of U.S. Bank, which I just spoke about. Those are maturing. That's about 1.7% of the total portfolio. Those are maturing partially this July and next July, so it's not a long-term holding, as well as 5 million of the Union Bank commercial paper held. That matures in June of this year. That's about 1.4% of the portfolio. So I'm open for any comments or questions on this.
Members, anybody have any questions? None? Oh, please, Councilwoman.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you and the acting, there you go, and the acting CFO for doing the due diligence to determine any potential impact and really to help allay the city's potential fears with regards to this. I appreciate that there's essentially de minimis impact, but I just wanted to thank you for your quick work on that.
Thank you.
Anything else, members? Seeing none, thanks so much for the presentation. Next, members, we're on file item number 9, City Manager's Report. City Manager, please introduce your report.
Mayor Strickland, members of the council, tonight we're going to be honoring Chris Slama. As you heard from some of the public comments, we want to take a few minutes to recognize a very important staff member. What I'd like to do is ask the mayor down here to, I'll have Travis Hopkins say some words about Chris, and then when the mayor gives Chris an award, we could all convene and get a picture with Chris as a send-off for him. But you know, literally, Chris is homegrown talent from Huntington Beach. He went to school at Huntington Beach High School. He started his first job at the city as a recreation assistant, and you know, he's been here 32 years as part of this organization. So with that, I'm going to ask, well, I guess Chris is already up here, but I'm going to ask Travis to say a few words.
All right, Chris. Well, I'd like to share a few things about my friend Chris and colleague Chris for the last the 16 years I was here, and he's been here much longer than that. First of all, Chris started here in 1991 when he was in high school as a recreation assistant. So way back then, he was a part-timer for multiple years. I think he got his first job in 2003 as a recreation supervisor at the Murdy Community Center, the one that just was rehabbed in the last couple years. And we just held our mayor's, held a town hall last week. So an awesome facility. After that, he went to the Murdy Community Center. And, after the Murdy Community Center for 7 years. Then he went to Rogers Senior Center. He immediately realized his passion working with the elderly in Huntington Beach and started working back then with the Huntington Beach Council on Aging and has done so the rest of his career here. Under his supervision, he greatly expanded the services at the Rogers Senior Center, the programming, the attendance increased. He worked with the team there, and they received awards from the California Recreation Society for awards of excellence for the programs they provided. And they developed the unique public-private partnerships, again with the HBCOA, the Council on Aging. And I also hear you helped implement the Senior Surf Invitational. Is that going on still?
It's melded.
It's melded. Okay, it must have been before me. All right. In 2014, Chris became Community Services Manager under the Programs and Service Divisions, and he worked on a lot of tasks of customer service. And one of the great things he had the opportunity to do was work on the Senior Center in Central Park, in transitioning from Rogers Senior Center to the new Senior Center in Central Park, helping building the team over there, the design and the transition, and help Public Works through the construction. So it was such an awesome thing that he's had the opportunity to do. After that, in 2018, he was interim Community Services Director, and in 2019, he was promoted to the Director of the Community Services. One of the things he's done over the last years, he's actually combined two departments, the Library Department and Community Services Department, into one very successful and cohesive Community and Library Services Department. So with that, I just want to thank Chris, and I will turn it over to the Mayor, Strickland, for a few words.
Well, there's a lot of things to love about Chris. As was stated earlier, we've been here 100 days, but I will tell you, every time you talk to Chris, the thing that's infectious is his smile. Like, he's always got a smile on his face. And really success in this community, if you look at all the wonderful parks and everything that we've done, not we, that you've done, it is amazing, the staff and your whole staff and you as a director and that staff. You've done it with joy, you've done it with a smile, and whenever we've had a question, you answered it really quickly. And you look at all these wonderful parks and everything that's great about Huntington Beach, you've left a lasting legacy here in Huntington Beach, your hometown. We're all gonna miss you. We wish you weren't leaving, but the legacy that you left behind will forever be grateful for the citizens of Huntington Beach. So thank you so much for everything that you've done for the city, and good luck in your future endeavors.
Well, yeah. Hey, Chris, would you like to say a few words?
Yes. Hoping to avoid that, but thank you. Thank you. Mayor, Travis, Al, everybody here tonight, thank you all so much. I'll say, first of all, none of that comes without just an amazing team along the way, decades of work with different iterations of staff and council members and commissions. This executive team, through the last couple years, has just been so outstanding to work with in this community. I always say I think I learn more from all of you than vice versa, but thank you for that. Also, really just to this community, I've met so many friends along the way, and with the different projects that we spoke of. Working at the Senior Center was just one of the best times of my career. But just thank you in general to the whole community, again, to this organization. And I have to say thank you to my family who's probably watching at home from Channel 3 right now, my wife, Crystal, my kids, Casey and Caitlin, my parents, John and Sue, hi everybody, and my siblings. Your support over the years has just meant the world to me, and it will continue to do that. So once again, I will continue to be a resident here, and I look forward to interacting with this community, but thank you for everything, Huntington Beach.
And if we could get the whole city council to come around to go to the front, it would make it easier. And the executive team, yeah, absolutely. Let's take a picture. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that.
Why don't you guys come forward? This way. Can everybody see me? Yes. Okay. Big smile. And a little closer. Couldn't miss you.
Councilwoman Mosier.
I'll make it brief, even though your career was not here. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And Chris, everywhere you go, everybody knows your name. I have been to so many different meetings, places, people that I've known that went to school with you, like just random people we would meet that are working in different places, and everyone, everywhere, has only the most wonderful things to say about you. And you're such a humble person. Don't like to hear those types of things, I don't think. But your smile precedes you in every room that you go in. You know, I think about sometimes, and one is you skating at the skate spot on the day that it opened, and then our city manager at the time trying to follow you and that not going well at all. I think he fell. You know, it's just going to be really sad not to have you here. But as one of the public commenters said, you really are the heart of the city and have been so for such a long time. I know that Ashley and the whole team will continue that heart beating strongly in the department. And I want to, I know that you know that we all are supporting you as you move on and accelerate and even lift up your career. And know that everyone will always know your name here, and I know that they're going to know that very soon in Irvine as well. And we just say cheers to you for this exciting endeavor that you're on, but know that you will be missed. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thanks again, Chris, for all your hard work. We all are very appreciative. Thank you so much. Thank you. Members, now we're going to go back to the agenda. We're going to go to the consent calendar. Members, the consent calendar is items 10 through 24. Would any one of the members like to pull an item?
I'd like to pull 10 and 11, please.
Mr. Burns, 10 and 11. Any other items from members? Seeing none, I would like to move the consent calendar excluding 10, 11, 12 through 24. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Kalmick.
I'm an aye, but on everything but 12, I'm a no.
Mosher?
Aye.
Vandermark?
Yes.
Strickland?
Aye.
McKeon?
Aye.
Bolton?
Aye.
Burns?
Aye.
All right. All are a vote of 7-0 with the exception of consent item 12. That's a 6-1 vote with Councilmember Kalmick voting no.
Thank you. Now, members, we're going to go to item number 10. Councilman Burns, you may open.
On item number 12 of the minutes regarding the flag, I believe that was the issue. But towards the end of the minutes, there's a paragraph that it says Councilman Burns stated, and it goes on in the last sentence of that paragraph. It says he noted that any special interest actions are divisive at any level of government, and stated this ordinance does not ban any flags anywhere except on the city property. That has like an inference of that. I said there was a ban on city property of flags, certain flags. So I'd like it to just be a period after the level of government, and then you could say he stated this ordinance does not ban any flags, period, and then, or anywhere. This ordinance restricts that government flags only are to be flown on Huntington Beach government properties, period. And that's it.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to make a motion for that change.
I'll second.
All right. So the item is moved and seconded. The minutes as amended. I'll go ahead and catch up with those later, but let's go ahead and take a vote. Councilmember Kalmick?
Pass.
Mosher?
Yes.
Vandermark?
Yes.
Strickland?
Aye.
McKeon?
Aye.
Bolton?
Aye.
Burns?
Aye.
Item passes as amended, 7-0.
Okay.
City Clerk Stanislaw, I was a pass.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were a pass. I'm sorry, I'm thinking pass like affirmative. I apologize, my apology.
Aye.
All right, so now we do have a 7-0 vote.
Okay, great.
Apologies.
Councilman Burns, we're on members on item number 11. Councilman Burns, you may open.
I have just a few questions from, let me see, community development. There was on 7-1, Lorraine Mendez and Associates, $300,000. And it's to for U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Consulting Services. And I'm just kind of curious that we pay HUD. With what funds do we pay them? Are we giving back their money, or how does that work?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Burns. No, Ms. Mendez is our consultant who specializes in HUD-related matters, CDBG and home. So we use her for technical assistance as the regulations related to that program are pretty intense and difficult. So from time to time, we need to ask her for assistance to ensure we're complying with those rules. You might recall at the last council meeting for our study session, it was mentioned that we can get audited, and if the audit is found not to be in our favor, we actually have to use general fund dollars to reimburse. So we're always very careful that our records are in order, that we're doing things appropriately, and we're following all those regulations. That being said, that is a multi-year contract. We paid last fiscal year about $60,000 in services for Ms. Mendez, and that's about what we average annually.
Okay. Yeah, online, she had a report on her website that she gave us. I believe that's where it was. And then on community development also, RSG Incorporated on 7-1. Are they managers, or what are they? What are they? The monitoring?
RSG is another consultant firm, and we use them to monitor our affordable housing as it relates to particularly home-funded units. We also can use them for other affordable housing units as well. So we need to monitor to ensure that the folks residing in that affordable housing appropriately qualified, that the property owner collected the correct information to ensure, again, it's to make sure we're complying with the home program, which is that HUD program.
And that $150,000, that's for 3 years?
I believe so. Yes. Yes.
Okay, and then I've got questions about two more entries. On this page 2, on 8.1 and 9.1, parking consultants. There's two groups, JR Parking Consultants and Parking Design Group LLP, both for $99,900 each. And I'm just, parking consultants, especially that close together, that's each 3-year contract, but it just seems like a lot for parking consulting.
Yes, so we wanted a bench, so to speak, of some parking consultants. We wanted more than one. We actually own the airspace for the Strand development on 5th and PCH. That was a redevelopment project, and it was structured so that the city, it was condoized, so the parking structure is a condo space, and the city's the owner of that space. So it's complicated in terms of it's not like the parking structure that the city owns on Main Street. So it is a public parking structure, but there are numerous agreements. There's a DDA, CCNRs, a CUP. The DDA was amended, which is a disposition and development agreement. It was amended multiple times. So it's a convoluted, complicated structure, and we wanted a couple of consultants that we could draw from for assistance as we were having some problems with the operator, which we don't contract with directly. Actually, the owner of the retail office condo space contracts with the operator. There's also a parking agreement that's part of all those agreements. So we brought those consultants on so that we could ask them for assistance. We will not spend all of that money. We've actually made some great progress without needing to do that. It appeared for a moment we were potentially going to be in a controversial, potentially litigation with the owner of the retail condo space. We've been able to move past that and resolve it, but that was one of the reasons why we wanted those parking consultants. So recently we have asked for one of them to do a comparison of parking rates of other public parking structures in nearby cities, because it appears that parking structure is potentially undervalued, and so that could be more revenue that the city could bring in. So that's like an example of a recent task that we have asked one of those parking consultants to do.
Okay. I'll make a motion to receive and file both as A and B requests.
I'll second it. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Kalmick?
Aye.
Mosher?
Aye.
Vandermark?
Yes.
Strickland?
Aye.
McKeon?
Aye.
Bolton?
Aye.
Burns?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
All right, members. Now we're going to file item 25, public hearing. Does anyone have any ex parte communications to disclose on this item? Nope. Okay. Councilman McKeon.
Yeah, before we start our presentation, I'd like to request that we pass each sub-item A through H individually and start with item A before the presentation.
I
believe that's out of order.
Well, okay. What's out of order?
This is a public hearing item, and so we would need to hear, since it was announced as a public hearing, we need to hear the public.
That's fine.
Well, he's going to explain why he was asking for that.
So with items B through H, Mayor, unfortunately, I have to recuse myself from participating in this housing element agenda. Item is I own property within 1,000 feet of one of the zoning items. I reached out to the FPPC almost 2 months ago for advice on this matter, but I've not yet received a final opinion. I'm extremely frustrated as this matter is of great importance to me and was one of the main catalysts for me running for city council. So just want to wish everyone good luck.
So I think the request, Councilman Kalmick, is that we do item A, which Mr. McKeon can participate in, and then we go to the presentation and then go B through F, if that's okay with you.
I just want to make sure that it wasn't, because it was noticed as part of a public hearing, so I would talk to that. So
No, are you okay with doing it that way?
Yeah, I have no problem.
Okay, all right. And so I would just like to move file item A to Pass.
To approve?
To approve.
Yeah, second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Mayor Strickland, if I may, just for the record, I wanted to mention that the reason the recommendation there doesn't address SB 10 is because SB 10 was an opt-in. The city had the option to opt in. The city never opted in, so we have never received SB 10 applications, nor will we receive SB 10 applications unless the city council decided to opt in. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Before we vote, can I ask Ms. Luna Reynosa a question? Are we going to talk about ADUs and the role that they play in the housing element and the kind of the numerical calculation?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's been moved and seconded. Just item A. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kalmick.
Aye.
Mosier.
Aye.
Vandermark.
No.
Strickland.
Aye.
McKeon.
Aye.
Bolton.
Aye.
Burns. The item passes 5-2. Council members Vandermark and Burns voting no.
Okay. So Mr. McKeon will be in the members' lounge. Now we can move forward with the presentation. Thank you so much.
Oops. Mayor, before Ursula begins, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank the team that has been working like crazy on the housing element. And if you give me just one or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Jennifer Villasenor, our Deputy Director of Community Development. Nicole Aub, I think I got that. Did I get that?
Obey.
Obey. I am not good with French, so I apologize. Obey. Alyssa Matthews, and Nicole is Senior Administrative Analyst. Alyssa Matthews, Associate Planner. Charles Kovac, Housing Manager. Matt Schneider, the Planning Manager. Steve Holtz, Deputy Director of Community Development. Ursula Reynosa, the Community Development Director. And of course, David Barquist and Rita Garcia from Kimley Horn, our consultants. But I think they've worked incredibly hard for a very long time, and just wanted to thank them. Ursula?
Thank you, Mr. Zelinka. We appreciate that. So good evening, Mayor Strickland and members of the City Council. The item before you this evening includes, well, we already voted, the council already voted on the ADU SB 9 applications. So now remaining is certification of an environmental impact report, approval of the housing element, and approval of the implementation documents to effectuate rezoning. Through the mayor, I respectfully request a bit of additional time than the typical 5 minutes, considering the number of actions the City Council is requested to consider, but we will keep this presentation on the shorter side, reserving time for City Council questions. And since we've publicly reviewed this housing element multiple times, we find that the information is in the staff report and in those previous documents as well. So really, we're going to just highlight some items this evening. Without going into too much detail, I would like to talk about the housing needs in Huntington Beach. It sort of frames a little bit of the reason why this is important. And there is more information in the housing element itself, but who in Huntington Beach needs affordable housing? So our household population information includes 42% of Huntington Beach households have someone age 60 or over, so largely an aging demographic of seniors. 10% of the Huntington Beach households are seniors living alone. 9% of Huntington Beach population are persons with disabilities. Many of those are also seniors, and many have more than one disability. In terms of employment information, 20% of our workforce is in the fields of education, healthcare, and social assistance, 11% in retail, and 10% in food service and recreation or tourism, which represents 41% of the jobs in Huntington Beach, all with average pay below the county median income. So who in Huntington Beach needs affordable housing? It's seniors, disabled persons, people that work here, and children of longtime city residents. Next slide, please. So I wanted to just briefly, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about the enforcement actions that the city faces if we do not obtain a certified housing element. We are currently out of compliance, and HCD has started that enforcement process pursuant to Assembly Bill 72. They must offer the city 2 technical assistance meetings to kick off that process. The first meeting occurred virtually on March 8th of 2023, and the second meeting is scheduled for later this, I think early in April. The next step is that HCD may refer the city to the State Attorney General for further action. Thank you. Some of the consequences of failing to obtain a certified housing element include legal suits and attorney fees. Some of the newer legislation has given standing to people that typically wouldn't have standing, so there are more opportunities for individuals to sue the city if we don't have a certified housing element, and we would, if we lose these suits, be required to pay the plaintiff's legal fees. There are potentially significant financial penalties that can range from $100,000 per month up to $600,000 per month of noncompliance. And the longer we're noncompliant, the increase in that fee, which is what the disparity is for. We could lose our permitting authority, and over the years, many cities have lost their permitting authority or portions of it. And one of the newer laws is that the court could appoint a receivership to, we're not quite sure exactly what that means because it hasn't been done yet. It's one of the newer laws, but it's one of the consequences. So again, the city could face significant consequences if we fail to obtain a certified housing element. It's for these reasons that staff continues to recommend pursuing a certified housing element, adopting the housing element and the implementation documents. As I mentioned at the November 1st study session, the reason cities incorporate is to have land use control. So I understand the importance and the desire of the city wanting to have control over our land use. The built environment is the legacy that we all leave behind as policymakers, as practitioners, so it's very important. But having a certified housing element and challenging the state on housing laws is not mutually exclusive. For example, when developers don't agree with the fees that they are being charged, they pay in protest. So they still pay the fees and then they protest. Similarly, the city can pursue certification and challenge the state at the same time. At this point, I'd like to introduce Nicole Abe to give a more detailed presentation on what is contained in the housing element.
Thank you. So there are 2 main components of the housing element update overall. First is the housing element document itself, and this is a planning and policy document, which is a mandated element or chapter of the city's general plan. The implementation actions of the housing element are what is necessary to accommodate the city's plan for housing through zoning. The implementation actions propose only zoning overlays that do not change the base zoning designation of a property. And there are no properties that are actually proposed to be rezoned and have the base zoning designation changed to something else. Both of these items must be completed in order to obtain HCD certification. Basically, they will not approve the housing element unless we complete the implementation actions simultaneously upon adoption of the document. So an update on the overall status here. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the housing element update, the overlays, and the EIR on November 16th, 2022 at their meeting. Then at the November 29th council meeting, the item was continued to a special meeting on December 8th with the public hearing open. At the December 6th council meeting, the December 8th meeting was canceled. And then the city council held a study session on January 17th, 2023, and provided feedback to staff regarding a preference to initially zone for the RHNA requirements only rather than zoning for the RHNA plus a buffer, and the implementation actions presented for consideration tonight reflect that feedback. And now for a quick refresher on the RHNA, here's some info on it, which is, RHNA is an acronym that stands for Regional Housing Needs Allocation. The RENA initiates the housing element update process, and it gives every jurisdiction a quantified housing need by income category. The state provides a regional determination for the number of units each metropolitan planning organization needs to plan for. Our local MPO is called SCAG, which is the SoCal Association of Governments. So the state gave SCAG a regional determination of 1.3 million housing units to plan for. SCAG then developed a RENA methodology and used that methodology to divvy up that 1.3 million units to each of its 197 member jurisdictions within the SCAG area, including Huntington Beach. And this is how we received our 13,368 unit number. And the city went through the very lengthy appeals process with SCAG. Ultimately, they denied the appeal, and the 13,368 units were finalized. So here we have the city's RENA by income category. You can see that the lower income units, which are the very low and low categories combined, account for just over 40% of the units. Moderate income units are just under 20% of the RENA, and above moderate, AKA market rate housing, is just under 40% of the RENA. So here is the total RENA strategy, including the buffer sites. This table reflects the total capacity identified in the housing element sites inventory, which identifies sufficient capacity to accommodate the RENA throughout the planning period, including buffer sites that can be rezoned with the affordable housing overlays in the event of a no net loss situation. This table shows the zoning capacity of the RENA sites, which are the properties that will have the zoning overlays applied concurrently with the housing element adoption. As you can see here, the total zoning capacity is 13,413 units, which is very close to the RENA requirement of 13,368. And each income category is very close to the RENA minimum requirement as well. So in order to accommodate the RENA, the housing element has an adequate sites program to accommodate the RENA requirements through zoning. And the RENA sites are identified within the implementing ordinances and resolution as the expansion of the existing affordable housing overlay within the Beach Edinger Corridor specific plan, a proposed mixed density affordable housing overlay primarily located in the Holly Seacliff specific plan area on existing industrial and oil related properties on the east side of Golden West, north and south of Garfield. And there are also 6 RENA sites that are not in specific plans. 4 of them are commercial general zone sites that abut Beach Edinger and residential zoning. And 2 of those properties have expressed developer interest. One is an existing office area at the northwest corner of Warner and Magnolia, and the other is an existing apartment complex at the southwest corner of Warner and Golden West. So here is the first overlay, the existing Beach Edinger Corridor specific plan, aka SP14, affordable housing overlay. The existing overlay was adopted in 2020, and it permits residential projects by right if they propose at least 20% lower income units to be built on site. The SP14 area is already zoned for residential development and allows development at densities that can accommodate that lower income development. And the existing development standards will remain applicable to any project that's submitted pursuant to the SP14 affordable overlay. And these sites were chosen due to their current states as underutilized commercial properties, potential for lot consolidation, as well as access to the freeway, jobs, and everyday services. Okay, next we have some info on the zoning map affordable housing overlay, which would create the new chapter 229 in the zoning code. This is an overlay designation that would not change base zoning of any property, and no nonconformities would be created as a result of applying the overlay as well. It will establish a new chapter 229 in the zoning code that would provide all the development standards. It would allow for development up to 70 units per acre, and the development standards proposed facilitate that at the proposed density per state law requirements. Any project proposed pursuant to the overlay must provide 20% low-income units on site. There's a maximum height limit of 4 stories, and there's a sunset provision that this overlay ends at the end of the 6-cycle planning period or when the city achieves its RHNA for all income categories, whichever is first. Now here is the proposed mixed density affordable overlay within the Holly Sea Cliff, aka SP9 area. Existing industrial designated properties along the east side of Golden West are proposed for inclusion within the Holly Sea Cliff specific plan affordable overlay. This overlay divides the SP9 sites into 2 areas that we refer to as north of Garfield and south of Garfield. North of Garfield, the proposal is to apply an RH overlay of a maximum 35 units per acre to this area, and the RH development standards of the zoning code would apply here. Also just wanted to note that the Planning Commission recommended that the former site numbers 393 and 394 to be removed from the inventory, and that is still part of the recommendation tonight. So the area south of Garfield is proposed as part of the affordable housing overlay 70 units per acre, and the development standards would be those of the proposed Chapter 229. The housing element identifies these sites overall due to their potential for development during the planning area. Notably, large portions of the overlay area are under single ownership, and many of these properties are underutilized with few permanent buildings, a lot of unused vacant space, outdoor storage. Because many of these parcels are under single ownership as well, there is potential for lot consolidation. And this area also has access to arterial streets, primary Golden West and Garfield, that would provide connections to everyday services, jobs, schools, and parks. And now I'll hand it over to our Deputy Director, Jennifer Villasenor, to discuss the environmental portion.
So the staff prepared an environmental impact report in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act. Because there are a number of zoning ordinance that are associated with the housing element update, in addition to an amendment to the land use element of the general plan associated with the housing element update, we prepared an environmental impact report. In this case, it's called a subsequent program environmental impact report, or EIR. So subsequent because we prepared an environmental impact report for the general plan, which was adopted in 2017. This EIR that was done for the housing element tiers from the environmental impact report that was done for the 2017 comprehensive general plan update, in which all the elements of the general plan were updated except for the housing element, which is on a different update cycle. It's a program EIR because a program EIR is appropriate for a series of actions that are related enough that you would consider them as all one project. The benefits of a program EIR are really such that you can get a better understanding of what the cumulative impacts would be from the series of action, in this case, the growth that might be associated with the housing element update. And it also allows you to think more holistically in terms of your mitigation measures that are proposed. So the purpose of doing the program EIR is really to provide the decision makers as well as the public with what the environmental impacts would be from adopting the housing element in addition to the land use element and the implementation actions that are proposed all as part of this project. It's to disclose what the environmental impacts would be from the potential implementation and build out of the housing element. So to that end, the EIR analyzed 15 topical impact areas ranging from air quality to utilities and service systems, and analyzes those impacts against some industry standards commonly referred to as thresholds of significance. So when we evaluate an impact area, we're looking at what is the significance of the project in terms of the environmental impact. If there is no exceedance of the threshold of significance, then we would say that that's a less than significant impact, and there's nothing further that needs to be done. If there's a potential to exceed the threshold of significance, and it's different for every topical area, then we would conclude that it's a potentially significant impact, and our next step is to look at what types of mitigation is feasible to lessen the severity of the impact. And so in that, to that end, the EIR also includes approximately 50 mitigation measures that are associated with the environmental effects that would result from the project. There are times when there might be an impact area that is potentially significant, and even after applying mitigation, it would be still significant. It doesn't lower less than the threshold of significance. And in that case, we conclude that an impact is what's called significant and unavoidable. With a program EIR, it's not uncommon to find significant and unavoidable impacts because there are things that we just don't know over the life of a longer term plan. So for instance, and it's a very, what we would call a worst case or conservative approach to addressing impacts in a program EIR. So for instance, this particular EIR for the housing element update, similar to the general plan update EIR, found that there would be significant and unavoidable impacts to air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, utilities and service systems, hydrology and water quality, and noise. And in each of those cases, it's generally because the impact is just not, there's no certainty that we can know if there will be an impact that cannot be mitigated. Although there are mitigations that are proposed, we just don't know if and when projects come forward what those will look like, specifically where within the areas that are being zoned they will occur. For instance, as an example, with air quality effects, if we had multiple projects in the same area going on at the same time, that could result in significant air quality impacts. There are certainly things that can be done to mitigate those, adjusting project schedules, and it's very likely that that would occur to reduce an impact to a less than significant level, but we cannot say that with certainty at this time, which is why it's a conservative approach to conclude that the impact is significant and unavoidable, even though there may be the case that in the future there's actually not a significant and unavoidable impact that we aren't able to mitigate.
Can I ask a question, please? Me. I noticed in the report, it didn't really dealt with everything before or while the project's being built. I didn't really read that anything was being addressed after the project is built, such as, air and things like that. It all seemed to be directed while or before the project is built. After, it really didn't see any kind of reporting stating the environmental effects on that. Was that not addressed?
It is addressed. There are a number of effects that are actually part of the significant and unavoidable impact analysis that show that the cumulative impacts were both what we would call construction impacts and operational impacts. For instance, the greenhouse gas emissions impact analysis, as well as the air quality impact analysis, concludes that operationally, meaning once everything's built and everything's existing, there could be significant and unavoidable impacts due to the operation of the project. So for each topical impact area, there's both construction or short-term impacts and long-term operational impacts that were evaluated for each category.
And did anybody from Huntington Beach actually take an active part in this study? And who wrote up this, who was part of this group that wrote up the conditions of the study or the EIR?
So generally, there will be an environmental consultant, a CEQA consultant that prepares environmental impact reports, and usually they'll have sub-consultants that work on technical impact analysis for specific topical areas like traffic, vehicles, miles traveled, greenhouse gas emissions, air quality emissions.
And they get their guidelines from where?
The CEQA guidelines. There's essentially thresholds of significance, requirements in the CEQA guidelines, and then the city adopts its own CEQA resolution, which we did back when CEQA was adopted, and then there's sort of industry standards for what those thresholds of significance are. Sometimes they come from a regulating agency like the AQMD, and sometimes they're locally adopted.
Okay, thank you.
There's two parts to the EIR. There's the draft EIR, which was circulated for 47 days. And then after that, we obtain comments and then produce a final EIR, which includes the draft EIR, comments, responses, and the mitigation monitoring program. Now, because there were conclusions that there was a significant and unavoidable impacts, the City Council, in order to adopt the housing element update, must adopt a statement of overriding considerations, which allows the council to approve the project even though there could be potentially significant impacts as a result of the project, by making statements that the benefits of the provision of housing and affordable housing would override or outweigh the environmental consequences.
Thanks, Jennifer. So this slide was regarding the ADUs, but since we already voted on that, we don't need to go too much into this. But the RENA strategy does rely on the construction of 487 ADUs, and 307 of those are in the lower income category, 170 are in the moderate, and 10 are above moderate. So that said, we've already gone through one of these actions, but the recommendation is to approve the following requests, including approving the SEIR with findings of fact and statement of overriding considerations, as well as approve the general plan amendment application to adopt the housing element update document. There are a few recommended actions for the implementation actions that facilitate the zoning overlays on the RENA sites, including amending the general plan land use element to describe the affordable housing overlays, the zoning map amendment to depict the overlays and apply the overlay to the 6 RENA sites that are not in specific plans, the zoning text amendment to create the new Chapter 229 in the zoning code that provides the development standards for the zoning map overlay, and the 2 zoning text amendments, one for the Beach Ettinger specific plan overlay RENA sites, and one for the Holly Seacliff specific plan overlay RENA sites. If the City Council adopts the housing element, it will be transmitted to HCD for review and certification. This concludes staff presentation, and we are joined here tonight by our consultant, Dave Barquist from Kimley Horn and Associates. We're available for any questions from the City Council. Thank you.
Questions from the City Council? Go ahead.
Thank you. So you mentioned that the proposed housing element has 487 ADUs. That's part of our, I guess, calculus for complying with the number that we've been assigned through RENA. So what would happen if those ADUs were not part of the plan? What would happen if those were taken out?
We would need to identify additional sites to pick up that loss in each income category.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I had to write this down because it was so complicated and it took me so long to figure out what the deal was with ADUs. I was really frustrated at the last meeting trying to figure out why it was necessary for us to stop accepting ADU applications when the council voted at the last meeting not to challenge the ADU law. So, I thought the issue was prospective, like why do residents have to wait 2 weeks? What's going to happen in that 2-week period? And then hopefully, we would get this whole ADU thing resolved, which, okay, we have today, that's great. But what I learned when I was trying to figure all of this out troubles me, and so I want to describe what I learned, and then I think based on that, I personally think we owe the residents an apology. So what I learned was that we had previously challenged the SB 68, the ADU law, back in 2020. So what that means is when Mr. Burns's item was introduced that said we won't accept applications for ADUs until the matter is adjudicated, the matter couldn't be adjudicated because we dismissed that complaint in 2021 with prejudice. And what that means is that we couldn't file another lawsuit based on those same claims again. So long story short, Mr. Burns should have been informed of that before he introduced his item so he could decide whether he still wanted to, considering that, it was void. I mean, we had already challenged the ADU statute and withdrew our complaint. So there was no reason to halt ADU processing. We couldn't, based on our own actions. That is really, really frustrating to me, and I don't think it's fair. We had residents who had ADU applications that they wanted to submit, and they were turned away, and they were turned away because of a mistake. My question is, how is it that Mr. Burns wasn't informed that that case was filed and then dismissed? Like, how was that overlooked? Because I think all of this could have been avoided. Okay, so there's no answer. Well, I will apologize to the residents of Huntington Beach for this morass, if nobody else will. I apologize on behalf of the city for us going through this whole exercise based on a mistake that nobody wants to talk about, and I personally think is unacceptable. We should be forthright and honest with the residents. Trying to slip this ADU thing in, with a social media post or something like that was suggested at one point when I was asking questions about why we did this when we had already filed and dismissed the case. No, we dismissed the fact, we announced the fact that we were going to stop receiving applications in a press conference, press release, what have you. So if we're going to start accepting them again, we needed to do that with a similar amount of fanfare and not just assume that everybody's going to know what's going on, because they watch city council meetings. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
This one's kind of easy. I admit I wasn't informed that we had an ADU case dismissed without prejudice, and that's my oversight. I'll take responsibility for that. But I also said that I don't care, receive ADU applications as long as they're under Huntington Beach zoning. That was my main desire. If they're under state overreaching zoning, I think it's BS. I think it's wrong. I think it's an attack on single-family residential neighborhoods. If they are for an ADU is for an R2, R3, or whatever, that's fine. That's where those people bought into. But in a single-family residential neighborhood, it is crap. It is not right for somebody to be able to build an ADU in a single-family residential neighborhood because it does affect the quality of life of all those other residential residences within that neighborhood. And I've seen it, and I believe it. It's not cool for those people that live in those neighborhoods. People say, oh, you're taking away their property rights. It's their property to do what they want. Well, I can't raise cows and other wild stock on my property.
Yes, you can with a permit.
No, I doubt it. That's an idiot statement, and by someone who I don't doubt would say something like that. I can't open a firing range a firing range right there in the middle of my neighborhood because it would disturb. I can't have a party at 2 in the morning and crank up the music because we live in a community with civil laws and respect for your neighbors. And that's what I mean by to protect our single-family residential neighborhoods from overbuilding and ADUs in those places, I think is wrong. And my big request was that we apply city law and not state law, because I still say the state law is overreaching, it is completely overbearing, and I think it's wrong. Pure and simple, I think the state is wrong on that one.
Mr. Burns, do you know what the delta, do you know what the difference is between our city regulations for ADUs and the state?
I'm not going to answer any questions from you, okay?
Hey, so I would like to actually bring it back to the item that's before us, the housing element. If I can ask a question, is it accurate to state that the 13,368 units is just the starting point, and we'll have to develop more in the future?
Thank you, Mayor Strickland, for that question. I did want to make sure we clarified, because I'm not sure how clear it was through the presentation, that the implementation, the zoning implementation actions before you this evening only put the zoning in place to accommodate the 13,368 RHNA. In the inventory, we do include the buffer sites, but we're not putting the zoning in place for those. So the feedback that we received at the January study session was to only zone for the RHNA, the 13,368. That is what is before you. If and when we face a no net loss situation, we will need to find a site in that inventory that we would then bring before the city council to rezone at that time.
And my follow-up question is, this overriding statement of overriding consideration, is that attached to B through G?
It's attached to action item B. So it's attached to the EIR. You cannot certify the EIR without adopting a statement of overriding considerations. And therefore, the other actions, the general plan amendments and the rezoning, you need to certify an EIR in order to be able to act on those items. I did want to just quickly say that CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, is all about disclosure. It's a disclosure law. Similarly to when you sell your home, you disclose all the bad things about it. You're disclosing the city, we're the lead agency on these actions, we're disclosing the potential environmental impacts associated with the action. It doesn't preclude the city council from moving forward. That's what baked into the law, the CEQA law, is this ability to adopt a statement of overriding considerations because it's a policy decision. The city council can decide.
Right. And we want to talk about mess. I want to talk about just point of personal privilege. I did put together a statement just because I wanted to make sure this is clear and on the record. I've always wanted to make sure I moved in a two-pronged process, one through a lawsuit and one to approve the minimum moving forward.
Mayor, before you start your statement, do you mind if council members don't have any more questions for staff, if we could open the public hearing to engage public comments? And then if there are no public comments, you can close and then offer opinions. Or
yeah, okay, I'll save that. So members, do you have any other questions? Staff, do we have any public hearing? Do we have any public speaking?
Why don't you open the public hearing?
Yeah, let's open the public hearing.
All right.
All right. Individuals wishing to provide a comment on items scheduled for public hearing may do so either in person or filling out a request to speak form delivered to the city clerk or via webinar by computer or phone. Once the mayor opens public comments, in-person participants will be called to speak first. All speakers are encouraged but not required to identify themselves by name. Each speaker may have up to 3 minutes unless the volume of speakers warrants reducing the time allowance. Do we have?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And before I call their names, I just want to announce that we did receive 7 supplemental communications that were uploaded to both the web and your iPads before this meeting tonight. And the 2 speakers I have signed up are Andrew Einhorn and Lita Whitehead. Please come down to both podiums.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for affording me the opportunity to speak. I'm a California native and grew up in Huntington Beach. I graduated from middle school and high school in Huntington Beach, and Huntington Beach has always been a great, pleasant, safe place to live. The Huntington Beach community has a unique feel about it. We all enjoy living in Huntington Beach. It has a reputation as a great city and provides a high quality of life. My parents bought our home in Huntington Beach over 50 years ago. My roots are here. I want to preserve Huntington Beach for my family, as well as our current and future generations. Our quality of life in Huntington Beach needs to be preserved. It's second to none. Allowing low-income, high-density housing is a detriment to our city and community. We are at capacity. We need to stand up for what we value and not give in to the political pressures and agendas that are destroying our great state. I oppose the housing element. I urge a no vote. I appreciate your consideration of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next speaker.
Just last call for Andrew Einhorn. This concludes public comments.
Okay.
Oh, here he comes.
Oh,
Here he comes.
Here he comes.
Oh. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You just come up. You just come up and just introduce yourself and come up.
This is weird. I'm Cooper. I spoke like last time. Been living here my whole life, 30 years. First of all, I would appreciate if you'd answer questions from like the other council members when they ask you a question. Like, because I voted, we voted for them, like other people. And when you don't answer questions from them, it's like you're saying you're not going to answer questions from us. And it's just like, I think you're supposed to be transparent or something. That's just like, I'm not going to answer questions from you. Come on. Like, I just like do your job thing, And the presentation was like solid, and where all those houses are going along beach and in those areas, it's like, everything I looked through on there seemed pretty fine. I don't know. So I hope you guys like all pass all this stuff. And just please like answer questions from the other council members. Like that's one of the big things that really was just like foolish or like just like and like a comment on what Councilmember Ron asked about, I don't know. It seems pretty straightforward. I just hope you guys like get all this through, make us a compliant city, build some houses. There's so many people here. Like 81,000 houses for like 200,000 people. Could use some more. I looked in the report, like 70% of them were built before the 80s or something, if I read that correctly. Like, I mean, why did the building stop so hard? Like, I don't know. Let's just keep building. Let's keep like going. Like, I was lucky enough to like find a house with roommates and stuff, but most of my 30-year-old friends that like grew up in Huntington Beach still like can't really move out. Can't really like not a lot of places that they can afford. But they grew up here. They wouldn't even be like bringing in new cars or anything. I don't know. But yeah, mostly like work together. Actually. That's it.
All right, thank you.
That's it.
That's all?
Yes,
Okay.
you can close the public hearing.
Okay, we'll close the pub. Do I have the go? Close the public hearing? Okay. Members, if you don't mind, I would like to go. Again, my whole intention going forward on this was to do a two-pronged approach. One was to go forward in the lawsuit, and as was mentioned by staff, and by the way, thank you, staff. I know how much work you put into this. And then support a housing element so we can be in compliant while we're doing the lawsuit. And as I got closer and closer, and the more I read, the more concerned I got. And I just want to, it comes back to the statement of overriding consideration. You know, as we, and I wrote this down, so I want to read it because I want to make sure I don't miss a point. As we dig into this further, in order to approve this housing element, the HCD is requiring us to sign a statement of overriding consideration that states that we believe that the benefits of these affordable housing projects override the negative impacts that they can cause to the environment in all the development projects. You have to mitigate negative impacts to the environment through CEQA, yet in this instance, the state is forcing our speech and violating our First Amendment rights by forcing us to say that these mandates and these mandated housing projects are more important than the negative impacts to the environment. More important is the air quality impact to the environment. That greenhouse gas emissions created more important than the damage to our geology, for example, our soils, our seismic ground shaking, and our seismic-related ground failure. So this overriding consideration supersedes all those concerns. More important than the potential significant hazard to the public and the environment through accident conditions involving the release of these hazardous materials in our environment. More important than the strain of our precious resources like water or water discharge that could degrade our groundwater quality and supply. So this statement of overriding considerations more important than the noise that would impose on communities, degrading their quality of life. The statement of impact, the statement of overriding consideration is more important than the strain of these housing developments that would pose on our public safety services. It's more important than the increase in demand on public spaces and parks. It's more important than the increase of traffic and the number of vehicle trips that would conflict with our city goals and our policies aimed at maintaining a specific performance threshold addressing circulation in the city. This again, statement of overriding consideration is more important than the impact on our schools and our infrastructure. The list goes on and on. I can't in good conscience have my speech forced to sign a statement of overriding consideration because it goes against everything I stand for. I will not allow the state to violate that First Amendment right, which is my vote, and as a citizen here in Huntington Beach. This isn't an easy vote for me because, again, I think that we should move forward, and I'm very grateful for the staff for all their hard work. But again, I just want to fundamentally come down to the governor and the push that we have here on Huntington Beach. It'd be one thing if the governor equally put these units on to all the cities across California in terms of the housing crisis. Yet 95% of the population lives in 5% of the area space in California. And the governor has no incentives, again, no incentives to do developing in those other areas. In fact, Governor Newsom, again, it goes back to his style of governing. It's okay for you, but not for me. Just like COVID, where he was in the French Laundry without a mask and saying everybody else had to wear a mask. Here in this case, he's putting down this huge number for Huntington Beach, but his home county of Marin has zero. Zero. Napa, right next door, where all the supporters and donors are, they have zero. San Bernardino, again, if we want to talk about housing crisis, they want to develop, but the state is stopping them from doing so, even when developers want to go forward and mitigate. But the state is stopping San Bernardino. So it is actually a philosophy that I've seen in my time in Sacramento, both in the Assembly and Senate. And it really is a war against suburbia. It's a war against the automobile. The fact of the matter is there's not an accident that here in California we have the highest gas tax in the country. We have the highest car registration fees. And we spend money on transportation. It doesn't usually go to roads and highways. It goes for things like mass transit, like the bullet train. And talking about wasted taxpaying dollars, like There's an old Jewish term called chutzpah. It really is chutzpah for Gavin Newsom to say, we're wasting taxpayer dollars fighting for the quality of life of Huntington Beach while he spends billions and billions of dollars for a train that goes nowhere. It is a war against suburbia. And again, as I campaign across this city, the biggest issue that came to me was this quality of life of the suburban coastal community that it is. And people asked me to fight and do whatever I could to fight to preserve Huntington Beach the way it is, the suburban, wonderful community that it is. People in Huntington Beach don't want an urban community. It's overwhelmingly. I don't think it's an accident that all four of us got elected, overwhelmingly. And a large part is we promised that we would fight these issues. And again, so I can't in good conscience move forward and vote for this unless there was a provision that said I didn't have to sign off on the statement of overriding consideration, because it's my job as mayor is to protect the citizens of Huntington Beach. And I don't believe that his housing crisis or his housing mandate is more important than the health and safety of my citizens in Huntington Beach. So that's why I'm opposing this housing element.
This was a really hard one for me too. I read the 500-page report. Thank you for putting that together. For me to sit there for 3 days and read through the whole report and understand everything that's in it says a lot. It was very comprehensive in order, and I can tell you put tons of time into this. So after reading the 500-plus page report and the statement of overriding consideration, well, actually, prior to that, I expected to make findings that would be of concern. What I did not imagine was how far the supposedly environmentally conscious Sacramento is willing to take their attack on HB residents. HB residents have been cornered into a position where we have to choose between giving up clean air to breathe, compromising our water supply, giving up the safety of our community, sacrificing our wetlands, or we will be fined. With the developments of the 13,368 units, they are projecting about 29,475 new residents, and that is only if there are 2.5 persons per unit. Most homes have more than that, so those projected numbers can double or even triple. I looked into the greenhouse gas emissions. As such, the report concluded that the GPU, it resulted in significant, unavoidable, cumulative impacts due to the generation of greenhouse gas emissions. ROG emissions, despite compliance with GPU policies, the project would result in significant and unavoidable impacts concerning construction-related ROG emissions and operational ozone. Hazardous materials. Build-out of these land uses would result in the use of hazardous materials and thus would expose the public or environment to hazardous materials through improper handling or use of hazardous materials, particularly by untrained personnel, transportation accident, environmentally unsound disposal methods, or fire, explosion, or other emergencies. Schools. Any one of the 378 candidate housing sites could be within a quarter mile of an existing school. However, the project will facilitate housing development, which does not typically involve uses or routine activities that would emit hazardous materials, notwithstanding upset accident conditions that could emit hazardous emissions within a quarter mile of an existing or proposed school. The GPU identified the Huntington Beach Union High School District, Huntington Beach City School District, and Ocean View School Districts, as well as portions of the Westminster School District and Fountain Valley School Districts, which could be affected. We have over 50 public and private schools in our city. Water. Future housing demand facilitated by the project would result in an unaccounted net water demand. Therefore, based on the report, projected supplies, there may not be sufficient water supplies available to serve the project in reasonably foreseeable future development during normal, dry, or multiple dry years. Until the water supply situation improves, the project-related water demands from future development would result in a significant and unavoidable impact concerning water supplies. Noise. Anticipated increase in traffic volumes would increase ambient noise levels through the city. The report indicated that the greatest increase in noise levels would occur along Bolsa Avenue between Edwards Street and Golden West. Substantial increases would also occur at various points along Adams Avenue, Atlanta Avenue, Edinger Avenue, Pacific Coast Highway, Bolsa Chica Street, Golden West Street, Brookhurst Street, where noise levels would increase above the established thresholds. Fire services. The project would result in substantial adverse physical impacts associated with the provisions of new or physically altered fire protection facilities. The construction could cause significant environmental impacts. In order to maintain acceptable service ratios, response times, or other performative objectives, there will be the impacts will potentially be significant. Wetlands. Although the report stated the general plan does not have the potential to indirectly impact habitat for special status species, riparian habitats, and wetlands by increasing environmental pollutants, promoting habitat fragmentation, and introducing these species can be affected. Then we have effects on migratory fish and wildlife. The report concluded that future development under the general plan could potentially result in the indirect loss or degradation of wildlife corridors through the increased light and noise pollution, introduction of invasive species, habitat fragmentation, and increased urban runoff. I believe that asking us to compromise our clean air, water supply, public safety, and protected wetlands, along with all the endangered species that not only depend on the wetlands, but the safe migratory patterns to survive, or else be fined into submission is egregious and punitive. I cannot in good conscience support item 25. I do not believe the benefits of building outweigh the consequences of destroying our city, our quality of life, and sacrificing our endangered wildlife.
Councilman Kalmick.
Thank you, Mayor. I heard a lot of really interesting things tonight. This is probably my 10th EIR that I've read, and a lot of the stuff in these EIRs are boilerplate. A lot of the information in them, if you did an EIR for building your own house, if you did a full environmental analysis, would come up with similar conclusions. These documents are informational documents to hit every edge case that could possibly occur in any development. Actually, and this is all part of CEQA, the California Environmental Equality Act, signed by Ronald Reagan when he was governor. So this document isn't some, I think, Sacramento Newsonian push. I do want to push back on a couple of things the mayor said about Marin and Napa having zero. According to ABAG, which is the Association of Bay Area Governments, their draft, their RENA allocation, Napa, the city of Napa has got 1,939 units. The whole county of Marin is something like 14,000 units that they have to account for. SB 106, which Councilmember McKeon mentioned at our last meeting, actually just lowered the threshold by which the county or that area has to account for it. Our default, we are a metropolitan under the classification for zoning, which means we have a minimum density at 30 units to the acre. Marin's legislative folks were able to pass get a bill through Sacramento that says that they are suburban and therefore only have to meet 20 units to the acre as their minimum threshold to do development in their housing element document. The issue is that they still have to meet their RENA. They just have a lower threshold by which to accomplish it. And had we known about the ability to lower from metropolitan to suburban, that is exactly, I think, what most folks have been advocating for, is the fixes in Sacramento, not in the courts. Huntington Beach is a suburban community. I think we can agree on that. But we would still struggle at 20 units to the acre. Even at 30 units to the acre, we struggle to meet the number, our RENA number allocated. As you can see through some of our density overlays, there was 35 units to the acre and 70 units to the acre. So it's a little interesting that you stated that HCD is making us do that. CEQA is actually is requiring us, because there are significant and unavoidable environmental impacts, and those impacts were not, I believe, all the ones that were listed by Mayor Pro Tem Vandermark, but construction, air quality, GHG emissions, which I do kind of find ironic that we're concerned about GHG emissions now when we drop the city's default purchasing of power from 100% renewables that would limit GHG emissions down to 38%. So I find that a little disingenuous of an argument. Water quality, obviously any type of development could potentially impact that. But again, as I think staff stated eloquently, that there's so many unknowables in this document that CEQA guidelines require us to say, yes, there's a potential significant impact. When we get down to the utility system for water, the reason that if you dig into the document and you read the water supply issue, it's because our regional urban water management plan only goes out through 2045, and it never contemplated this level of development in it. But if you read through, it says in its update, it will likely consider this amount and likely provide for that. In addition to the under 30 million gallons of water we brought on board through the groundwater replenishment system in Fountain Valley this year, producing 130 million gallons of fresh water daily through groundwater replenishment and sewer water recycling. So statements of overriding consideration are interesting pieces. I don't believe they are forced speech in any way, shape, or form. If no statement of overriding consideration is ever going to get signed in the city, I think that creates a very, very interesting future for this city, being that CEQA is obviously a very complicated beast, and I think that going through a 500,000-page EIR with multiple appendices, I think we're going to see that we have that. When we passed the general plan update, there was a statement of overriding consideration as part of that framework document. Just doing a framework document required a statement of overriding consideration. So I'm disappointed that I think I can count to votes here that after going through all of this work that we're getting hung up on a CEQA technicality. When it seems like we agree that there's some sort of agreement that the housing element is satisfactory, but because of the esoteric analysis in CEQA, which is a guiding document and an informational document, not necessarily a policy document, that to say that we're being forced into stating that those things are true, I don't necessarily think that that's the case. Noise, again, all of these things are the cumulative impacts of full build out of this project, which I honestly don't think happens, right? The zoning on Beach Boulevard has had this zoning for 5 years and nothing's been built. So to call that this is we're going to have full build out tomorrow, that an onslaught of housing is going to come in the next tomorrow, if this were to pass, I don't think is reasonable. And I think would like to commend staff in this bucketing system for this. Obviously, I would have preferred, as I think I voted for, just taking care of it all at once, because having staff time and money to go through and having come through the zoning text amendment to add a new property every time a property comes out in order to further effectuate fair housing, I think is a kind of a bureaucratic churn that just costs everybody money and time. And speaking of money and time, I'm just really disappointed that we went through this whole exercise on ADUs and SB 9 to end up kind of back where we started. It's also, obviously disappointed that we lost our TRO today in federal court. That was denied. I've got word this in between closed session and regular session. Again, would have liked to have talked about those in closed session at some point today, but disappointed that we were unable to. I'm disappointed to hear that this new council, who's had quite a bit of time during the campaign to review the housing element, to come up to speed on all of that, needed another 4 months to come back to the exact same point of kind of copping out on a technicality and getting this there.
So let me ask the question again. Is a statement of overriding consideration mandatory in us passing this housing element?
In order to certify the EIR, you need to adopt a statement of overriding
And
consideration.
that overriding consideration means that all the other issues we have to deal with, we have to ignore because of the governor's housing emergency. Is that correct?
Just the impact areas that are found to be significant. So those 5 topical areas, not all of the impacts.
Okay, so there's more impacts, but just the significant ones we have to override based on this.
Yes, the ones that were determined to be significant and unavoidable.
So you could actually, in theory, I guess that begs the question, in theory, we could have developed a housing element that had no significant and avoidable impacts. In theory, we could have, for noise, we could require mitigation measures that require people to work during the day and be quiet, and we could sell everyone quiet tires and make sure our roads were all paved 100%. There's no implication that you don't get to, that you can't, you could build it, you could, in theory, it'd be very expensive and difficult, but you could mitigate all of these below significance. So it's just because our plan checks a box above certain thresholds in the EIR that requires the SOC, not necessarily the other way around, where the SOC is required in order to pass the housing element. Our housing element requires a statement of overriding consideration because it has certain thresholds above CEQA. Right? I mean, we could have, the housing element we could have mitigated those below by making very, very hard to do pieces, right? We could have air quality, we could have special, you only can run electric batteries that are charged outside the city, or water policy, we could build, a brackish water plant as part of this, and that would mitigate our water concerns.
Potentially, yes,
So-
but what CEQA requires is that you identify feasible mitigation measures.
Sure.
And so at some point, a mitigation measure might become infeasible or create effects themselves. And so we will identify feasible mitigation measures that we know of today. And then, as mentioned before, the impact analysis for finding significant and unavoidable is really because of the speculation of trying to say that there will or won't be an impact at some point in the future, because we don't know the specifics of individual projects that are coming through. It could be very likely that as projects come through and they comply with the mitigation measures, they aren't causing significant environmental effects.
Isn't that what we normally do as a city council without the governor's mandate? Isn't that what we do as a city council? We do what we can to mitigate those issues, to try to lessen those issues for our citizens?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And normally we're able to accomplish that
Right.
on a more project-specific EIR.
Correct.
It's not uncommon in a program EIR to have significant and unavoidable
Right.
impacts.
So
due
if
to
we
the long-term
didn't have to
plans.
deal with the governor's mandate, we do that as we currently talk about. We work to mitigate those issues so we don't have a overriding consideration. We work to try to fix those issues as we look at development by development. But I also want to say, look, the city council, and it's before me, have been good stewards. Because we've already built more affordable housing units than most of the neighboring cities here in Orange County already. And again, I give credit to the previous councils for that. But this is an unjust number, and it is us having to protect the citizens of Huntington Beach that I can't in good conscience ignore all those mitigations that we would normally do on a normal project because of the governor's housing element and because he put such a huge number that would fundamentally change the makeup of Huntington Beach.
Mr. Mayor, I need to clarify that it doesn't really have anything to do with the housing laws that we are in the situation of the statement of overrides. As it was mentioned earlier, in 2017, when the city did a comprehensive general plan update, the city council adopted a statement of overrides. I think every single EIR in the past 5 years or so has required a statement of overriding considerations. So again, it's a disclosure document. You mitigate to the extent that you can, which is when you mentioned there were these other impacts beyond the 5 that were unavoidable. We were able to mitigate all those other impacts through this document. So this document does have significant mitigation associated with it. There were 5 areas where we were not able to mitigate to less than significant and unavoidable. But that really doesn't have anything to do with the state housing laws. That is just the way the California Environmental Quality Act is set up. So I just wanted to clarify that because I think it's an important distinction.
And if I could build upon Ursula, Mayor Strickland?
Yes.
So it seems that there's concerns with the statement of overriding conditions, at least from some of you. And what I'd like to recommend, if it ends up being that it's clear that it's a split vote of this 6-member body tonight, since all of the remaining actions from item C all the way down are dependent upon having a certified CEQA document, taking further action on these other subsequent items, if the statement of overriding conditions creates a scenario where CEQA action and the CEQA document can't be certified by the lead agency, the council, then the rest of it is for naught. And if we go through the process of even considering these other items, we could be creating some liability for the city from a policy, maybe legal, maybe operational standpoint. And what I would recommend, if there is a split, is that we continue this item, and the council directs the city attorney and city manager to come into closed session with this body, and we thoroughly discuss the implications of and potential paths forward, given the split that may exist on this council about this statement of overriding conditions. Because otherwise, I'm really concerned about the path forward.
I want to say for the record, just so the public understands, I think I understand the city manager's statement and his intent. The intent is not to take an open session discussion back into closed session. What we discuss in closed session are limited topics that are confidential, and they fall under the Brown Act exceptions for closed session. I just want the public to know.
Yes, and thank you.
It wasn't
It's
clear.
about liability.
Yep.
And the potential dimensions of that word that could be facing this city.
If that's the will of the council, I'm happy to table this because maybe Councilman McKeon will get a word back from the FPPC as well, so he can participate in these.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If there was no statement of overriding consideration, would you consider passing the
I would
environmental
consider it,
document?
yeah.
So what if there was a position where staff would come back on each potential, with a report or a memo, on each potential project coming through that would be effective of those 5 conditions?
I'd be very open to that, yes.
So there's 5 issues, and we want to be good stewards of that. That yes, we agree that there's a statement of overriding consideration, we have to do that. But that if there is every project that comes through, staff could issue a memo that would say, okay, this of those 5 that we can't mitigate, here are going to be those cumulatives that we can have at least be knowledgeable of what those are going to be as we move forward in other policies.
I'm open. I would have to see the details. Obviously, I'm very open because, again, as I opened with, my whole philosophy was to move forward at the minimum with the state while we, in conjunction, take this to court.
Yeah, because if there's like say, instance, the water issue, right? Like, we're doing housing, but there's commercial projects that are outside the housing element. And if we know that, hey, a housing project came through and it had an X number of water issue piece, that if there's a discretionary commercial project, we could maybe have them do something more for water to kind of offset that. So even though we would agree to the statement of overriding consideration, we could potentially mitigate that on a project-by-project basis in other ways, because it's all a bucket of in the city.
Again, I would have to look at the details.
Okay,
I'm not making
all
a
right.
commitment.
No, I understand
but
that.
I'm open. Look, again, I'm open. So if that's the will of the council to table, I'm more than happy to move to do so.
I really don't want to just lose the aspect, though, that we need to fight state overreach. We can govern ourselves.
Without a doubt.
And we need to serve the people and the businesses and the visitors of this city. And we just received training or education on framework for ethical decision making. I don't see any of that in this being considered ethical. at all. It's state overreach, and they send us a threatening letter telling us the repercussions of what's going to happen to us in this city. It's basic bullying, and it's just threats made, and I'm not sure why it is. We handle it in the courts so we don't make mistakes. Let the courts decide, but that's not good enough for the Sacramento and Newsom.
Let's make this crystal clear. We're fighting, and we've asked Michael Gates to fight on behalf of the city and do whatever we can to fight about the overreach from the Sacramento.
And the bullying, because they sent us a pretty threatening letter, and I'm not at ease with that at all, because I believe that that's why the courts are there. Let us take care of issues, and let's mitigate that, and we govern ourselves. Or I'll tell you, I'll give you a quick story. My mom told me when she was a little girl, World War II, she lived in a little village in France. One day the Germans came marching into town, and they took it over. And I'm not so different than that's what Sacramento's trying to do to us, is just negate our influence, and they take over. And it's gross, and I don't agree with it.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you. So one, I'm surprised you're talking about bullying, Mr. Burns. But to get back to it, I think that I really do appreciate all of the hard work that's been done by staff over a very long time. And yet again, after this last study session that we had, the requirements that we're discussing now, and that the few of you are saying that you're not comfortable with, were there all along. So I feel like if everyone was really serious, we wouldn't have required staff to do this additional work to create this new version of things. Although I do understand you're trying to mitigate the amount and lower the amount to that. So that does make sense. But moving forward from that study session, I don't believe that this council was serious about actually moving forward at all. I think that we're all better off when we're all better off. And I think that, as was mentioned earlier, when Cooper had come up, there's a lot of people in town who cannot rent. They cannot rent, they cannot own. They've grown up here. Many people are doubled up, tripled up. An increase in supply in housing is very important with regards to the vibrancy of our community, of welcoming people in. It's also really important to another topic that we're going to talk about later, which is homelessness and prevention of homelessness. Another conversation I had earlier this week was about workforce housing, and we are having a challenge with retaining our police department, our officers, and frankly, they can't live here in town. So there's a lot of value in creating supply for those people, including our police officers, our nurses, our teachers, and on and on. One thing that is important is that, yes, it's difficult. We have a lot of built out areas in the city. We need to figure out creative solutions like ADUs. Councilmember Burns, you and I both have a mutual friend who lives in an ADU that was just built in the last year above my friend's garage. And I would imagine you'd say that his being there or the building of that property is not negatively impacting the residents in the community that he lives in. So I don't think it's a fair statement to say that any ADU that's built is going to negatively or adversely impact the community. I think you did, but you're welcome afterwards to correct that. In addition, the mayor has talked about a war on cars, war on the suburban community. We've talked about a concern about traffic. If we worked on being more creative and creating a more walkable city that was more smaller mobility and pedestrian focused, we wouldn't have a war on cars. We're currently having kind of a war on humans, the way that I see this as well. Another point that was made was, that the potential impact to schools or on schools. I'll tell you that the lack of affordable housing does have a direct impact on schools. We have a number of schools who are currently seeing students not coming in, so with a reduction in students having to potentially close. So there is a direct impact on schools in our community. When new families can't move in, where is the vibrant quality of life? Where is the quality of life? When starter homes, frankly like the ones on my street, have no children running down the street, where is the quality of life? Where is the vibrant quality of life that we need to keep our city growing and and teeming with life? It's not going to be there. I do understand that we need to do it in a way that is mindful, that is thoughtful, but we also have a fiduciary responsibility to our residents to act in good faith. And the consequences of not passing this are dire, and they were laid out in this presentation tonight. If you don't like a loss of local control, then you're really not going to like the potential ramifications of not adopting a housing element with even the potential of having a certified housing element. We talk legal suits, fees, loss of permitting authority, financial penalties and court receivership. These are very real things that are going to impact our community. We talked about loss of funding for services like homelessness. We talked last week about a $12.98 per resident cost for homelessness, which was really impressive to me. I can tell you right now that that is going to go through the roof. And if we're not building more housing, we're not preventing homelessness. I know that's not the only way to prevent homelessness, but we're not preventing it in that way, and the cost is going to go up anyway. So I am just really disappointed in the lack of good faith and the appearance that you're trying to fight for the community. Also, if you're going to fight, then fight. And we've talked about the order of this before, but first you go about doing this. You follow the law, you comply with that, and then you fight in court. The fact that we did this in the opposite timeline, I don't understand, because it doesn't set us up for success. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
All right, what's the wish?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the EIR with statement of no writing consideration and the rest of it. I want to make at least an effort to do the right thing. I know that the Attorney General's office is watching, so I'd like to be on record going ahead and approving this plan. So that would be, I think we have to take the EIR first. Right, okay.
I'd like to second that.
Put it to vote.
So just item B, correct?
Correct.
All right. We'll start the vote. Councilmember Kalmig?
Aye.
Mosher?
Aye.
Vandermark?
Nope.
Strickland?
No.
McKeon's out of the room. Bolton?
Aye.
Burns?
No.
The item fails 3-3.
And I would say we continue the item. Do we have to renotice the meeting?
Yeah, now that you killed it, you have to.
No. I think you can continue it with public hearing closed, correct?
I think the public hearing needs to stay open, and it needs to be continued to a date certain in order to not have to renotice. If it's not continued to a date certain, it would need to be renoticed.
Well, but the public hearing's been closed. No, the mayor closed the public hearing.
I did.
Yep. I think we've continued with public hearing closed before, but it's up to you, Attorney Gates.
No, I'm looking to Mr. Vigliota. We theoretically could reopen the public hearing, right? I got a head nod. Could reopen the public hearing in order to continue it.
Would you need to renotice?
I'm going to wait for someone else to make the motion.
I don't think we can, I think can we ask the mayor to reopen, I don't know, the public hearing portion to reopen it? Doesn't the chair have discretion in that, or does the legislative body have the ability to?
All I'm saying is for the previous notice to work for a continued hearing, it needs to actually be a continued hearing, so reopen the hearing.
Sure.
And then continue it.
But I don't know if can I make a motion to reopen the public hearing?
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, then I would make a motion to reopen the public hearing and continue the item until our next council meeting, April
11th. The next meeting is the 11th.
April 11th? No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I've got
April
it. I'm a
4th.
week ahead of that. Yeah, April 4th.
And direct staff to do some more work on trying to potentially resolve the statement of overriding consideration to something that we can get to.
I can second.
Are we going to need to do a motion to reconsider the CEQA document?
I think we're waiting on the city attorney to make sure we're following everything. Yep.
So the motion on the floor, reopen the public hearing tonight, and then continue.
Maybe amended.
Right. I just want to make sure the record's clear. So you just voted it down.
We didn't.
So it basically technically needs a motion for reconsideration. It failed, so you can't just continue, I'm sorry, a failed item.
But I can't make the motion to reconsider.
It's got to be someone on the prevailing side.
It's 3-3.
So the motion fails. There's no, you shouldn't have called that vote.
Go ahead, jump in, Mr. Vigliota.
So whoever was on the prevailing, so the motion failed, so the motion was to approve, so whoever was on the side of not approving would have to make that motion.
So what's the cost to reconsider? What's the cost to renotice the document? What's the cost to renotice?
I think it's like $5,000 if I'm correct.
Okay.
But it would still require a motion to reconsider with or without a continued hearing.
If you're going to bring it back and not reopen the public hearing, you could make a motion just to bring the item back and not renotice.
One more.
It's getting confusing because you're going to need the hearing for the other subparts.
Correct. So say that again, Mike.
So if one option would be to just bring the item back, not reopen the public hearing, and then you would have to renotice the meeting. You'd have to renotice the public hearing. Does that make sense?
Even if the CEQA document has now been voted down, we could bring the CEQA document back again?
Correct.
Without a motion to reconsider?
Right.
We just have to renotice.
Or two of the other three could make a motion to reconsider.
Right now and reopen the public hearing.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to reconsider and reopen the hearing.
I'll second.
And continue the
continue it.
Yeah, we'll continue the item. I'll move to continue the item.
To a date certain.
To April, was it?
April 4th. That's the next regular meeting
So I move to continue the item to the next regular meeting on April 4th
with public hearing open.
with public hearing open.
All right. Are we ready to vote? Councilmember Kalmick.
Aye.
Mosher.
Aye.
Vandermark.
Yes.
Strickland.
Aye.
Bolton.
Aye.
Burns.
No.
All right, the item passes 5-1-1. Councilmember McKeon's out of the room. Councilmember Burns voting no.
All right, members. Let's keep going down someone let Councilman McKeon know that he can come out. Members, we're on file item 26. Treasurer's Department. Staff, please introduce your report.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you some information regarding the City Treasurer's Department and the restoration of the City Treasurer's powers and duties, according to the City Charter. So let me give you a little background on this. Section 311 of the City Charter, City Treasurer powers and duties, states in part that the City Treasurer shall have the power and shall be required to receive on behalf of the city all taxes, assessments, license fees, and other revenues of the city or for the collection of which the city is responsible. Also to have and keep custody of all public funds belonging to or under the control of any city or office, department, or agency of the city government, and deposit or cause to be deposited all funds coming into their hands, as well as pay out monies only on proper orders or warrants in the manner provided for in this charter. In summary, the city charter requires the city treasurer to receive and keep custody of all funds of the city and disperse these funds properly. So a little bit more background on this. In February of 2011, the City Council approved Ordinance 3907, purported to transfer certain charter-mandated powers and duties from the City Treasurer to the Finance Department by deleting Chapter 2.16, City Treasurer, from the Municipal Code and transferring those duties via the Municipal Code and this ordinance to the Finance Department. This was a significant shift away from the desire of the citizens who are directly represented through their independently elected city officials to act as stewards of the taxpayer monies and as checks and balances within the operational structure. As the city charter is the fundamental law of the city, any ordinance in conflict with the city charter is therefore void. In January 17th of this year, City Council approved an H-item request from Councilmember McKeon to repeal Ordinance 3907 related to the City Treasurer's charter powers and duties. So to follow up on Council's approval to repeal Ordinance 3907, this item before you includes various recommended actions to restore the charter-mandated responsibilities of City Treasurer's Department by proposing the following operational structure. Number one, restoring the reporting of the cashiering and collections to the City Treasurer's Department. Number two, requesting 2 additional full-time employees, one being a deputy city treasurer. The cost of that will be offset somewhat by deleting a half a position currently in the City Treasurer's Department and adding 1 accounting technician, which would serve to replace 2 part-time positions at this time. As well, moving the city treasurer from part-time to 3/4 time in order to oversee these additional responsibilities. The request would be to appropriate $75,000 for this fiscal year and $300,000 annually. These costs are shown partially offsetting by the half position that would be deleted. So the rationale for this, number one, is to comply with the city charter, which is the fundamental law of the city of Huntington Beach. Number two, we want to, with a dedicated city treasurer's department, focus on enhancing internal controls and the checks and balances. It's currently more important than ever to maintain the checks and balances to protect public funds and make sure that that all of the internal controls are overseen and enforced. Number three, the structure that is proposed will also allow us to identify additional ways to improve efficiencies and decrease city expenses. So some ideas that were brought from this department that you might have been introduced to include a merchant card fee recapture. Currently, within the city absorbs all credit card merchant fees. A survey that was completed polled various neighboring cities in Orange County and LA and found that many of those cities have credit card convenience fees for online payments already in place. I know the county does not allow you to pay your property taxes with your credit card without a credit card fee. So additionally, if we can have the opportunity to work on this program which currently we are we are paying for or subsidizing approximately $700 to $1 million per year with that. So if we could recapture some of those fees, that would help with decreasing some of the city's expenses. Additionally, another item that may have been mentioned to you all is to move to electronic payments solely versus the paper checks. This saves both on time and money. It also improves security to help prevent fraud. Another area that I saw that we could focus on somewhat is to improve collection of delinquent items. That could also help to improve efficiencies as well as increase some revenues. Some other potential revenue increases or revenue sources that I had identified just in a few weeks of investigating our current short-term rental program. Now, this is with no changes to the current program, no increases, just the program in place. There are areas of improvement with the auditing and collection of funds that we could potentially raise in the hundreds of thousands of additional revenues. As well, the structure that I'm proposing would allow us to improve our cash flow reporting with improved analysis and hopefully allow us to invest even more efficiently the funds that we do have, bringing in increased revenues in that area as well. So I'd like to open it up now for any comments that you may have or questions that you may have with regards to the item that is before you.
Members, any questions? Councilwoman.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Backstrom. A quick question about the efficiencies that you anticipate being able to try to capture. Is it possible for you to report back in 12 or 18 months to let us know, just what you were able to recoup?
Yes, I think that's a great idea, and I would definitely like to be able to report back to you 6 months, a year at the most, but even hopefully in 6 months, and just give you an update of what's going on, so I'll commit to doing that, and I think that's a great point. Thank you.
Is quarterly too quick, or do you need 6 months, in your opinion?
Well, I think 6 months would be great, but if you want me to come back a quarter, I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
6 months.
Sure, no problem.
Members, do I entertain a motion from someone?
I wanted to.
Go ahead,
one thing.
Councilman.
So I just wanted to be clear, just for transparency, because as an elected official, you don't go through the regular process for pay raises and everybody else. That we are changing from half-time to three-quarter time, and in that process, there is also a pay raise involved. So I do support that as we're going on to increasing your time as well. But I just wanted to make it clear that there is a pay raise involved in that. So I'll go ahead and move the item.
It's been moved by Councilman Kalmick.
Second
by Councilman Burns. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kalmick.
Aye.
Mosier.
Aye.
Vandermark.
Yes.
Strickland.
Aye.
McKeon.
Aye.
Bolton.
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Item passes 7-0. I have two titles to read.
Okay.
First, the introduction of ordinance number 4287, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Huntington Beach repealing ordinance number 3907 relating to the duties of the Finance Director. An introduction of ordinance number 4288, an ordinance of the City Council, City of Huntington Beach, amending Chapter 2.15 relating to the duties of the Finance Department and re-adding Chapter 2.16 as amended relating to the duties of the Treasurer.
Great. So members, now we're on file item 27, campaign contributions and compliance. Staff, please introduce your report.
Yeah, tonight we'll have Shannon Levin give the staff report on this item.
Good evening. Let me pull this up. Okay, thank you. We're bringing back, this is in response to Councilmember Kalmick's request to discuss SB 1439, which was brought into legislature last year. This is part of the Levine Act, part of the Political Reform Act, in which it describes how local government agencies and elected officials are impacted by campaign contributions. The amendments to this act now prohibit local elected officials from taking part in licensing, permitting, and other entitlement proceedings involving a party or participant who has contributed more than $250 in the previous 12 months. And moving forward, it will be in the following 12 months as well. So definitions, party, participant, license, permit, other entitlements for use. It's pretty extensive, and we've asked our city attorney's office to help us decide which of those contracts, licenses, franchises, et cetera, that will really apply to you. This is a retroactive, enforcement. It only takes effect as of January 1st, 2023. Any contributions received in 2022 do not apply, and anything that was voted upon in 2022 also does not apply. So staff recommends a couple things. We would like to see that our applicants have multiple opportunities to see this language on our cover pages of our agendas, applications, and in our formatted contracts as well. And when staff might see something that would trigger this potential conflict, we would advise to our ability. And staff is creating a workflow to engage departments as we process licenses, permits, and other entitlements for use. And staff will also have a rolling report available so that our elected officials can refer back to that over the next 12 months, considering all of the items that you discussed, especially if you have 10 to 20 items on the consent calendar. That's a lot to account for over a 12-month period. So options, since this is a pretty low threshold dollar amount, your options are to recuse yourself from the discussion and vote, to return the contributions, and also, number 3, refrain from accepting further contributions. So this is pretty quick. The staff report attests to most of this. If you have any questions, please let us know.
Do you mind if I make a comment for clarification too?
Yes, please.
So this, like other potential FPPC violations, they're for the officers to own the issue, right? Or own the wrongdoing. Even if staff is offering to provide some support, that it's up to the elected official, to the officer, with or without that support, to do the right thing and to have all the information and make the right decisions. So I just wanted to make it clear, on one of the slides, there's some recommendations for staff to do some legwork on this to make sure everybody's informed. But at the end of the day, we're responsible, not staff, if that makes sense.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I believe it said contributions to campaign, but doesn't that also include charitable when we ask for charitable donations? If we ask for Boys and Girls Club, if we ask someone for $1,000, for example, to raise money for a charity, doesn't it include there?
So if you act to benefit a charity through a third-party donation to a charity?
Yeah.
That's, I don't know if that falls under the Levin Act, this update, does it?
I believe it does.
Okay.
That's why I want to make sure it's clear for the members, because it's not only, I think it was presented as your campaign donations, but my understanding, and maybe we can get clarification in the next meeting, but my understanding is even when we raise money for a charitable organization, that's part of it as well.
That's always been a required disclosure, but not in terms of this.
The 250 or above.
Yeah, but we could follow up with some additional clarification.
I would like to have that clarification.
For sure.
Mr. Mayor, you're referring to behested payments? Is that what we're talking about?
So for example, if you ask for more than $250
yeah.
for the YMCA, for a local Boys and Girls Club, I think it also applies,
Wild.
not just campaign contributions, but if you raise money for a charity, it also applies that you would have to step out for a year. I do want that clarification, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, let's definitely get that clarification. That would be helpful. I have a question as well, if that's okay. Yeah. Where'd Shanna go? There you are. Hi. There's the participant or party issue, right? Like, so this gets into, and if I haven't been following this super closely, I just know there's a lawsuit that some folks are pending on this, but it seems to me that if there's a project, Project X, and there's neighbors around there that you may know personally, and they contribute, but then they come to a council meeting or they send a letter in, are they technically an interested party to that potentially? Under this, I read something a while ago. Has FPPC clarified that yet?
It is my understanding that they would then be considered a participant, but I would refer to the city attorney's office to clarify.
We will follow up on that as well.
Okay. Because
Send me all your hypotheticals and we'll
okay,
get back to you.
because it was like actually brought up, I was in a actual legal, from another law firm that sent out, hey, elected officials, here's the thing. And it basically said that like a neighbor who lives next door to the project, who has no financial gain or loss in the project directly, could be considered under this. Yeah, which I don't know how you start tracking that. You're getting third, fourth order down the weeds into that. But yeah, if we could, just a memo. I don't know if we need to get it back publicly, but that would be really helpful. Thank you, Shannon, for all your work on that one.
All right, members, anything else on file item 27?
I'll move to
Move to receive and file.
I'll make the motion.
It's been moved. I'll second it. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Kelmick?
Aye.
Mosher?
Aye.
Vandermark?
Yes.
Strickland?
Aye.
McKeon?
Aye.
Bolton? Burns?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
All right, members, we're now on file item number 28. Staff, please introduce your report, or Councilman, do you have something to say?
Yeah, Lieutenant Smith, do you mind if I say a few things before you start?
Sir.
Yeah, so, excuse me, there have been some comments in the community regarding our 90-day plan, so I wanted to clarify some points. The contract that we signed with the community is that on day one, we would implement a 90-day plan to combat homelessness. And this plan focuses on outreach to homeless individuals, educating them on the services that are available, and importantly, enforcement. The first part of the plan was an accounting to unpack all of the current services, programs, and resources the city is utilizing to combat homelessness. This was performed and presented at the March 7th City Council meeting during the study session, and I recommend everyone please view that study session for more information. The second part of the plan is to retool our current services, as well as establish new practices, ordinances, and systems to establish a set of metrics that we can use to measure success. This plan will be a rolling 90-day plan or quarterly review where we will analyze our measurables through established metrics to gauge success, as well as see what needs to be adjusted. Today's presentation is the second part of the 90-day plan, and once implemented, every 90 days we will look back at our metrics and decide what needs to be altered, added, or removed to ensure maximum success and efficiency moving forward. This has not been done in the past. To Lieutenant Smith's credit, we made a request to staff to please keep the PowerPoint presentation short with the details provided verbally so as to keep the community engaged. We have received emails and comments from the community that they would like to see more details of the 90-day plan on paper. So rather than walking through them verbally, I would like to make a motion that we table this item until the second meeting in April so that Lieutenant Smith can bolster the presentation to add more written details about metrics, enforcement, ordinances utilized, etc. Let's make sure we get this right and limit any additional expenditures where possible, and also include our nonprofits and faith-based organizations. Before I'd make that motion, Lieutenant Smith, are there any comments from the community that you want to address? And could you mention some of the measurables successes you've achieved since we started this 90-day plan process?
There have been, the comments I've heard and have been inquired about is specifically about our enforcement posture, which we have been conducting enforcement continually throughout since the navigation shelter has been built. And I really urge our community members, if they have questions about what we are doing from an enforcement perspective, to view our public records. Our arrest logs are on the website, and they will see we are taking action. We do have staffing constraints we must be aware of. For instance, right now we're down 24 sworn positions, 15 unavailable due to injuries or illness, and 6 currently in training. And we are utilizing our resources to the best of our ability, and any plan going forward would look to maximize the benefits we can get from our programs, utilizing everything available to us.
Okay. So before I move the motion, are there any immediate items that need to be addressed, in your opinion, between now and the next city council meeting when you come back with more written details on the 90-day plan?
Yes, sir. I would request that the council approve filling the supervisor, the social services supervisor position. That would help ensure adequate staffing and supervision of our programs. Currently, I am supervising the 2 social workers as well as fulfilling my police management duties. And having a supervisor there would greatly assist with their expertise. And I would just ask that we fill that position, which is already in the current budget and in the next year's budget, and do that while maintaining our existing social working staffing levels.
Okay, so knowing that, I'd like to amend my motion to add the supervisor position between now and when next time you come back with more written details of the 90-day plan.
I'll second it.
Point of order.
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Mayor.
ahead.
The motion is to table the item and take action on the item. I don't know if we can do that.
And for additional clarification, was the supervisor position agendized, or was it just a proposal in the?
It was a proposal, right?
Yes, it was a proposal. It's an existing position. I'd be seeking approval due to the managed hiring process to fill that position.
Yeah, but I don't think that was contemplated by the staff report or on the agenda, and I'm concerned about moving forward on that item without proper notice to the public. And unless I'm missing something.
It was in the staff report.
The general approve the plan, though.
Yeah, general approve the plan, I don't think is sufficient. I think if you're gonna hire and allocate those resources, I would feel better if it was agendized as such.
Okay, so can we do that in the next meeting? I mean, obviously we'll have to agendize it
You're
then.
saying it's essential between now and the next meeting?
It's essential to move as quickly as possible on that, in my opinion, to assist me in carrying out the duties.
Well, let's hear the whole plan then. It's not even on the agenda.
Yeah, we can do it now.
Wait, well, under the financial impact, it does make a statement about the position, and then it's part of receive and file.
I know it's
But
it's a
not
judgment call,
clear, though.
and I'm telling you right now, the recommended action, it's not in there. It doesn't show up on the agenda. Receive and file a report is on the agenda, approve a 90-day plan is on the agenda, and there's nothing about hiring. So it's a judgment call, that's my call.
Okay. All right, so you're moving to table this item?
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks. Okay. First, thank you, Lieutenant Smith, for all your work. I know we didn't get to hear the plan or everything this evening, but I know that you've been doing a really stellar job under difficult circumstances, but you always do a great job. But before I ask you some questions, I'd like to set the stage for where we're at. I think it's important to do so because of today and the day that we're on. During their 2022 campaign, the new council members here, as Councilmember McKeon said, made a contract with the HB voters. Item 2 of that contract stated, quote, implement the 90-day plan to combat homelessness and clean up our streets. Residents heard during their campaign that on day 1, as he also mentioned, they would make good on their contract and implement their 90-day plan. Gracie Vandermark, now Mayor Pro Tem, made the following comments related to homelessness and the 90-day plan at an event. If you ask our city council, they'll tell you everything is great, everything's under control, but it's not. We were told if you want to enforce your no camping, let's put up a shelter. A shelter, we're talking about $17 million to the taxpayers, which we heard at the last meeting that wasn't the case. It's sitting there practically empty. They're not going in there. They don't want to go in there. So what does our current council think, which was the last council? They think it's a great idea to buy the building across the street, the Quality Inn, which will be a second homeless shelter on Beach Boulevard. That's not a second homeless shelter, it's Project Home Key. They didn't talk to us about it. We did, we had council meetings. They did this on their own. What the 4 of us have talked about doing is we want to resolve the issue. It is resolvable. There is actually a plan in place right now. When they said you want to put that shelter up, there's a 90-day plan that came with that shelter that went in a drawer the minute we agreed to that shelter. We want to take that out and implement it as a plan that takes all the homeless people and it catalogs them. We need a council that wants to get that done. We want to get it taken care of. So we've committed to taking care of the homeless issue. We're not just complaining about it. We actually have 2 plans to get that done. The 90-day plan was the first one. Number 2, we want to unleash Michael Gates. And I wanted to note that at the recent press conference, surprisingly, Mr. Gates expressed his approval of our homelessness efforts, and I appreciate that. So back to the present day, we're on day 105 from the oath of office. Maybe that was day 1. Or if we give them some grace and say that day 1 was our 12/20/22 meeting, we're on day 91. And I'm still curious about that contractually obligated 90-day plan that went in the drawer. So now the question, has Chief Handy's 90-day plan been implemented, Lieutenant Smith? And how's that going?
To the extent of what the plan was that I'm aware of, which included the outreach efforts, yes, that hasn't been implemented and it's continual.
Okay. And it was originally 90 days before the Navigation Center was open, correct? So that opened in, I think, December 2020?
To my understanding, yes.
So it was, the 90-day plan finished, and I know it's continuing because we're always educating the public and businesses and such, and the homeless people who are out in the streets as well. Okay, so that was already done then. Have you had difficulty implementing the 90-day plan?
No.
Okay. I know that's a difficult question to ask because you've continued the original plan, which was to educate people. But my point with this is there was no plan that was put in a drawer. And we can keep talking about a rolling plan because it is good, definitely, to have ongoing feedback, ongoing accountability, assessment, transparency to the community. I believe that that was being done, probably not to the extent that it should have been, but there was always information and data on our website, our Homeless Solutions website, that had that information there. I would say also that the council's approach, starting with the very beginning meeting, well, really more on the 20th, has resulted in a loss of tens of millions of dollars of funding for the building and implementation of our healing center, a permanent shelter. On the December 20th meeting, the council majority decided not to support Jamboree's request for our BCHIP funding application, which was about $10 million that we should have been able to get. Hopefully that will have another round and we'll have an opportunity in the future. We also lost around $13 million that had been given to us, or basically offered to us by CalOptima. So that's $23 million. Because of the approach of this council. What I'd say is we do need to continue the progress that's been made, and what we've heard at the last meeting was really there's been a great system of care that's been created. There's always more to do. We want to continue accountability and transparency to the public. Continued progress, accountability, regular progress updates, defined success metrics, data usage policies, access data from the county, continue to improve communication. With regards to this the director-manager position that was mentioned here, hopefully it's good that it'll be coming back because I would like to talk about that more and maybe perhaps even I would like to get more clarification on that because it's essentially looking to create or to move the director position down to manager. My concern with that, as we move forward and maybe if we have a more robust presentation would be that we have more clarification and due diligence with regards to that. Because if it's just a cost savings, is it worth it? Because it's an investment as well. We do need to be able to recruit and retain whoever we hire to do that. And also that particular position has pretty broad job requirements, requiring that they work broadly across all departments, I'd say, within City Hall, also with the county, with the state, with various county agencies. So it's not just also managing the team. I did want to thank caseworkers who are great. They just started in November, and they've been having an incredible impact Our previous director had been trying to recruit them for a long time. It had been very difficult to do so because of the hiring environment and also because of the background check requirements. Fortunately, we landed the most incredible people. Definitely would want to be able to move forward on the supervisor position, and hopefully we can unfreeze that because it's a very important thing to be able to have. We'll talk about that at the next meeting. Also wanted to acknowledge our HB Cares program and Virginia, who has really gone above and beyond. Back in June, started the program with 3 pilot volunteers. And then now she just started, has 12 additional volunteers who are screened and trained and getting ready to work, both on our homeless task force phone lines and also in the navigation center shortly. I think that that's an incredible progress that was made prior to this year. Also, she's looking at projecting about 562 hours of homeless task force phone line volunteer hours. Also at the navigation center, assuming we can get everybody in there, and it looks like that's on its way, about 114 hours are projected for the year. So I'm excited to hear the plan. I hope that it does acknowledge more of the full efforts, which I know we did discuss at the last meeting, but really this is a continuation of a lot of good work. I applaud that. I appreciate a rolling quarterly review. I just wanted to make sure we set the stage with regards to the 90-day plan as presented. Thank you.
City Manager Al Zelinka.
Mayor Strickland, to Councilmember McKeon's request about the social services supervisor position, it's already on the books. It's already funded. There was confusion on our team about the managed hiring process. And so I understand it to be a priority. So I will advance that position for Lieutenant Smith because it's already on the books and it's already funded. So I apologize for the confusion on our part, and thank you for the concern.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you. Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Vandermark.
So there have been significant improvements since we got on council. The only difference between you and us is we don't go around telling people. We've had people say how much better it's been in the navigation center. There have been significant improvements. We have people telling us how much safer they feel downtown. It's not perfect. There's still messes, but we're not getting as many pictures of people putting feces all over the floor. We're not getting reports of women being followed in parking structures. So things have improved. Our officers have done an amazing job. So we're just not here to say, well, I'm taking credit or she's taking credit. We want things done, and things have changed, and they have improved. Like I said, the only difference is we're allowing the officers to do their job, and we're not trying to take credit for anything.
Great. Can I ask if there's been a change in enforcement?
Our posture and direction for the officers has remained the same.
Councilmember McKeon.
Yeah, Mosier, Councilwoman Mosier. I love how you get all wrapped up about like being literal, specific dates, when the 90-day plan started, in a drawer, et cetera. The key piece that was missing from Handy's 90-day plan was enforcement. An example of 2 things we've done immediately was 2 ordinances that we all passed together, that we brought forward, talking to the officers, have been sitting there in a drawer or a desk for years to enforce not having closed tents in a park. You would think that would be common sense, but apparently that was not being enforced. Enforcing the parking structure, vagrancy, loitering. So that was done right away. That's already had a measurable success. I've talked to the officers. Lieutenant Smith even brought up a point about a gentleman in a park, right away, enforcement. That was a key piece that's missing. When you have strong leadership at the dais, it projects down to the police officers because they know they can do their job without fear of repercussion. If you guys were doing such a good job, and again, we're not here to attack, we're here to work as a team, but you want to constantly attack us. If you guys were doing such a good job, then why was the #1 issue for voters homelessness? Right? So we came in with a posture, we're gonna implement the 90-day plan immediately. And like I just said, that starts with doing the accounting of all the services that are being provided, which we did last meeting. So we're trying to work together as a team to make it better. Yes, you guys are doing things good, but it can be better. And so we want to set metrics. And so we had I thought it was a good idea to have Lieutenant Smith come back with written details but then you choose to take the opportunity to attack us personally. You talk about decorum, but it only goes one way. Why is that? It doesn't make sense. We're here to work as a team to make our city better. This was the #1 issue that voters told us needed to be addressed, and enforcement was lacking. And that's what we jumped on right away. Yes, can we do better? We will, and we will look back every 90 days to measure our success.
I would like to move the table of this item. Or continue it to the next meeting.
Councilmember McKeon already made that motion.
Second it. Can we call
Okay.
that roll?
Yeah, and you're saying till the
next
second meeting or the next meeting?
The next meeting on April 4th.
4/4, okay.
4/4.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and.
No,
call.
2 meetings.
Yeah, that's what I thought you had said,
Yes.
to 4/18.
Yes, 2 meetings. That'll give them appropriate time. So 30 days to come back with more written,
Is that
robust
okay?
details.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Can you call the
let's-
roll?
Let's vote. Councilmember Kalmick?
Aye.
Mosier?
Aye.
Vandermark?
Yes.
Strickland?
Aye.
McKeon?
Aye.
Bolton?
Aye.
Burns?
Aye.
All right, it's moved.
I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. The next scheduled meeting of the Huntington Beach City Council Public Finance Authority is Tuesday, April 4th, 2023, in the Civic Center Council Chambers. We're adjourned.